Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the Astrology of June 2026. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon out there. We're going to be taking a deep dive into all of the transits, all of the planetary movements, all the full moons and new moons. We're going to talk about planets moving into new signs. We've got a lot of ground to cover this afternoon, so I hope that you're doing well out there. Buckle in for a few hours, get yourself something good to drink, get a little snack, and let me know if you're here in the chat. Let me know where you're stopping in from. I love to see all your smiling faces here in the chat. A few announcements before we dive into all of it. Of course, we're talking about the Astrology of June 2026 today. We'll get to that shortly. You can find me, friends, over at spencermichaud.com. If some of the things that we talk about today are resonating with you, or if you're like, I wonder how that affects me personally, you can go over to spencermichaud.com and sign up for a reading. I do mythologically based, tarot based, fixed star based, decan based. Decans is one of my specialties, the 10-degree sections of the zodiac. I help break down all of the different parts of your chart through your narrative story. Also have readings available where we go through the next few months ahead and prepare you for what's coming. And I also do tutoring sessions. So if any of that sounds appealing, go check out spencermichaud.com and click on the Book Now button. There's also a webinar store. If you like the types of slides that I show here in the broadcast here today, if some of this piques your interest and you want to learn more, I have a number of pre-recorded webinars on the store where you can learn about the decans, you can learn about planetary magic through a series called Dignity and Devotion that I did with my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews. Also have a webinar about the connection between tarot and the zodiac, so check that out on the store. Speaking of Third Coast Mojo, you can find my beautiful partner Tanya over on Etsy at Third Coast Mojo with magically elected oils that try to harness some of the best energy that the sky has to offer to get you through the day. Here we're featuring an exalted Mars and Capricorn High John oil for overcoming obstacles. It's really great for kind of empowering yourself, for stamina and all those things that we need, especially if we're getting real tired out in the world. Sun and Leo Easy Life, smoothing your path with the sun in its own domicile. We've got Venus in Pisces, helping to attract energy into your life. And then finally, Mercury in Virgo can help you with sort of like some mental health things, right? Like kind of mental acuity. If you need help focusing and concentrating, Mercury in Virgo is great for that. All right, friends, check her out on Etsy at Third Coast Mojo. You can also subscribe to a newsletter that we have where we make announcements of when we're going to be going live and when we're releasing new oils, products, etc., new classes. Make sure you sign up on the newsletter. You get a discount on any reading that I offer as well when you do so. And if you would like to support the channel, you can go to buymeacoffee.com and support the channel and become a patron that way, or you can purchase a super chat today while we are live on the broadcast on YouTube. All right, we got through it. We got through it. All of the announcements in record time. Record time. Oh my God, my friend Mila's here. Firefly Lily, nice to see you. Mila says, hello, Spencer. It's Mila. Can't stay long, but hope all is well. Nice to see you, Mila. Thank you for stopping by and letting me know that you're here. I've got a new friend that I made, and I've been playing a game. I've been playing a multiplayer open world type of game. It's called Sky. It's a beautiful, beautiful game based on kindness and being able to connect and build friendships with people all over the world. And Mila and I have had some nice conversations. So welcome, Mila. And if you have any questions about what we talk about here today, don't be afraid to put it in the chat. But it's really nice to see you stop in. Really appreciate you being here. Okay, friends. So let's see. Let's talk about this astrology of June 2026. We've got a lot going on this month. We're going to be talking about kind of Gemini themes. We're going to be talking about Cancer themes. So we've got the transition from the sun in Gemini into the sun into Cancer. We have a couple lunations, full moons and new moons, quarter moons, etc. Mercury's going to be stationing retrograde this month. So that's sort of something that a lot of people are curious about when they're learning about astrology. Mercury retrograde, it happens fairly regularly, not every single week, but it happens about 3 times a year. So it is notable because sometimes it can bring some snafus with technology and things of that nature. But we'll prepare you for it. We've got a few malefic enclosures this month, which are related to planets that are a little bit stuck. We've got Venus and Mercury in malefic enclosure towards the end of the month, so I'll try to help you with that as well. And we're going to be starting off this month with some out of bounds planets too. So kind of these big picture thoughts. And let's go to the medium range view. All right. So where we are looking at just kind of we talked about the big picture. We've got a number of Aries and Cancer squares too. We've got planets hanging out in Aries. We've got Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries. We had a lot of planets that left that big Aries stack up that we had about a month ago or so. And now as the planets move or ingress into Cancer, they're going to start making a little bit of a square to Saturn and Neptune. So there's going to be a number of those happening over the month. The gist of that is that a lot of the efforts that we're making to become more independent and to become, to take risks, right? To put ourselves out there, to start something new. Some of that is going to be coming into contact with our ability to protect that which we want to grow into full fruition. Cancer is a lot about, it's got, archetypal mothering energy, I guess you could say. But a lot of it is about protecting something against the harsh world before it's ready to be launched or released. So there might be some tension that we have over the course of June where we're trying to start something new. We're trying to figure out how to become more independent, or we're being forced to be more independent. And we may be wanting to protect that a little bit and be more patient with it, but there's a lot of tension with that. It's like the trying to run before we can walk on some level. So we'll try to navigate that together. Of course, we talked about the Venus and Mercury malefic enclosures. Mercury, a planet related to communication, commerce, being able to do business, exchanges, may be a little bit difficult to navigate as we go through the malefic enclosure, where the planets Mars and Saturn are going to be making a little bit of a difficult time for that planet. Think about being sort of stuck with your back against the wall and you're trying to fight your way out a little bit. That's what Mercury is going to be experiencing. Venus, the planet that helps us to harmonize and that helps us to create, I guess, win-win situations or bring things together that have been separated, also is going to be in malefic enclosure for only a few days at the end of the month. So it'll be temporary, but there may be a few days where we have some difficulty harmonizing with others as well. So in June, some tension between our ability to strike out on our own and to stay either hidden or to stay protected or to nurture that which we are trying to grow into its fullest form. Some tension with that. The ability to communicate being a little bit dicey with Mercury malefic enclosure and Mercury retrograde, right? We might be having some misunderstandings over the course of the month that could make it a little bit difficult. And then just a very temporary 3-day period where our ability to harmonize with others isn't as great as it might be. The good news is that we do have a really beautiful aspect at about the first week or so of the month with Venus and Jupiter coming together. Those are called benefic planets. Benefic planets are the ones that help us to harmonize. Like Venus helps bring things together. Jupiter helps bring us good fortune and good luck and brings order to chaos on some level. So those two planets coming together could be a really nice moment in the beginning of the month. So that's something to look forward to as well. We'll talk about the Mercury retrograde period today. That's going to be happening towards the very end of the month. So most of the month of June, we will have a direct Mercury, but it's going to be kind of starting to potentially move in, get us ready for moving in a different direction. We might be changing our minds on some things. We might be reevaluating some things. All of those things are up for reevaluation with Mercury retrograde. And then finally, at the end of the month, Jupiter will leave Cancer, which is a place that it is very comfortable in. A planet is a host for a certain sign or a temple. So in this case, Jupiter is like the exalted guest in Cancer, where Jupiter is a planet that loves to promote growth and expansion. Cancer is a place that is very fertile. There is a marriage between those two, planet and sign. Now, Jupiter is going to move into Leo, so there's going to be some different pressure that we might feel to create good fortune. Jupiter helps us to create good fortune through the conscious actions that we are trying to take out into the world. So instead of nurturing something, it might be time to show it to the world. It might be time to utilize our ability to work with spotlight energy. Some of that may be a little bit scary, because I know a lot of us, like some of us who are maybe a little shy or sort of hermits, putting ourselves out in the world could feel a little bit intimidating. But the opposition that we're going to be feeling with Jupiter and Pluto and Aquarius, that tension of visibility versus invisibility, is something that we'll work through at the end of the month as well. Okay, so those are kind of our big picture thoughts. Let's see. Ani is here today. Says, hey, Mercury is being tricky with Sun Uranus. Prometheus isn't cooperating with me now that Mars is in Taurus. Yeah, we've got kind of the Mars Taurus energy right now, right? We had Mars that was in Aries for a number of weeks. Its home temple, where we were able to direct our energy towards independence, towards severing and separating things that didn't serve us or that weren't a part of our values. Now, when we have Mars in Taurus, Mars is moving through the section of the zodiac where we're trying to harmonize our senses with our spirit, with our body and spirit. And when Mars is moving through there, it's a little bit disruptive. It's like we're uncomfortable in our bodies. It's like there might be sensory things around us that are a little bit disruptive. We may have difficulty with our energy. Taurus is a place of inertia. Taurus is a place where we have difficulty getting moving, right? Sometimes we have difficulty stopping when Mars is in Taurus. So the question of how do we pace ourselves is going to be important with Mars and Taurus at the beginning of the month as well. The Sun-Uranus conjunction is today, as I'm recording this on May the 22nd. So a renewal of Uranian themes in the heart of the sun. Might be getting some new ideas today. We might be getting a jolt of lightning to our nervous systems. I know my beautiful cats were really frisky this morning. They were kind of naughty as well. They were just running around, tearing around the house and getting into stuff that they wouldn't normally get into. I think they were just maybe bored. I think maybe there might be a boredom that comes with Sun Uranus, or where they're like, we just have to shake it up. We don't care where we're not supposed to go. Like, we're just gonna go there anyway. So yeah, it's a lot to process. Okay, so those are big picture thoughts, right? Aries Cancer squares, Venus and Mercury malefic closure, Mercury retrograde, Jupiter leaving Cancer. Let's do the medium range view. The medium range view allows us to see what are we going to look at on with lunations, new and quarter moons, full moons, etc., ingresses of planets into new signs, solar phases where a planet is making sort of either an emergence of visibility or becoming invisible. Those were really important to ancient astrologers and ancient philosophers because they were omens that spoke very loudly. And then we'll talk about the out-of-bounds planets and the enclosures. Out-of-bounds planets is when a planet is sort of acting outside the norm. Right now, we still have Venus and Mercury out of bounds, so we might be exploring ideas, relationships, and things that we love that might be outside of what we normally would. So that is something to consider as well. So let's start with the lunations. We have a last quarter moon on June the 8th at 17 degrees Pisces, a square between the Gemini sun and the Pisces moon. That last quarter moon might be about reducing our maybe over emotionality at some point. There may be something where we have to use our rational head rather than just our intuition. Sometimes we can get confused through our intuition. I'm someone who generally likes to trust intuition, maybe even more so than my rational mind. But there can be times when we might imagine things that aren't actually based on reality. And sometimes we have to dig a little deeper for the facts. And that might be what we're looking at this last quarter moon on June the 8th. We have a new moon in Gemini 3, the third 10-degree section of Gemini on the 14th of June. That is a place in the zodiac where we have so many options that we can't possibly pursue all of them. So we might need to make a choice. One option has to be released. We have to let go of one option so that the other can be nurtured into its fullest form. On the 21st of June, we have a first quarter moon after the new moon, a little bit of a tension of bringing something into being. The first quarter moon is going to be squaring the sun in Cancer and the moon in Libra. So the moon in Libra forces us, asks us, I guess you could say. The moon isn't necessarily a planet that forces anything. It's sort of a, receptive type of planet. It is asking us to see things from someone else's perspective. It's asking us to identify imbalances, and in this case, related to one-on-one and personal relationships. Maybe an imbalance in family dynamics, maybe an imbalance in our romantic relationships that we need to examine, maybe without getting too angry or frustrated about it, but in the spirit of trying to bring some kind of equilibrium back to that relationship. So that's on the 21st, right on the summer solstice. That's right when the sun moves into Cancer and we have the sun at its greatest height of declination, you could say, where the days are the longest. And then we end the month with a full moon at on the 29th of June at 8 degrees of Capricorn. So that tension between one-on-one relationships, nurturing relationships, sensitivity to others, and then having to balance that out with some of the harsher realities of the world. We're testing our relationship sensitivity out against some kind of more harsher structure. Like imagine like a fertile field beneath a big a mountain, right? A rocky terrain where we have to decide if we're going to stick around in the beautiful butterfly fields, or if we're going to climb that mountain, which might be a little bit more difficult. And we have to balance those energies. We might also be trying to figure out where we want to build our empires, I guess you could say. That's some of the questions that come around that full moon. We'll talk about it more in depth as we go through it today. Ani says, yes, it's a stubborn, persistent resistance with Mars and Taurus in my first house, foiling my plans and dampening the inertia I've created, blocks in communication with women. Interesting. Yeah, because Taurus is sort of a feminine earth sign, right? I think patience is the key. I think pacing ourselves is really important. I think not feeling like we have to do all of it at once, like taking tiny little steps, bite-sized pieces, I think can be something that can be really helpful for that. Instead of having a huge ambitious project that makes us feel like we have to have all these elements taken care of before we can even start, how do we just take the tiniest of micro movements? And I think that once you are able to start moving one foot after another, that's when we get the momentum where it's really hard to stop, right? So I think that it's how do we just take that first micro movement to get it going. Ani says, Gemini, my second, unclear expectations of resources and miscommunication, things not delivered, cancellations, etc. Oh, there you go, right? Maybe with Mercury retrograde, some of those things will be up for review. Good news on the solstice, Ani says, I'm hosting an event for a festival party. If we can work out this lag in communication, support, and resources. That sounds awesome, Ani. I'm excited for you. I think that that'll be maybe that'll be a really nice event. Maybe the Venus Jupiter conjunction will help smooth that process out in the beginning of the month as well. Okay, so those are our lunations with the different moons for the month. Ingresses is kind of a fancy way of describing a planet moving into a new sign or a new temple. So on June the 1st, Mercury is going to move into Cancer. Right now, as I'm recording, Mercury is in Gemini. And this is the comfortable space for Mercury in Gemini, right? It is a space where it has all of its resources to be able to communicate with one another. Although it is out of bounds right now, we might be having ideas that are coming from all over the world and all over the spaces of and corners of our mind. But it does smooth out some of those processes of exchange. It helps to translate something from one language to another. I know in the cool game that I've been playing with my friend Mila, there's a built-in translator. So you can kind of communicate with people all over the world. I've been made a really good friend in the Philippines recently, and just been enjoying connecting with people from South America. We've got people from Europe. We've got people from Africa. It's really incredible to be able to speak with people and to just do something fun together, something that is low stakes. I think it's a game that helps you to de-stress a little bit. But Mercury and Gemini can help facilitate those communications, right? Once Mercury moves into Cancer in June, communication becomes maybe a little bit more emotional. Maybe there is a lot of nuance to the communication rather than just the words being spoken. It's the facial features, it's the body language, it's the nonverbal communication. So think about that as well, that our communication, pay attention to those signals that you're getting from other people when Mercury moves into Cancer. Venus moves into Leo on the 13th, moving from Venus being able to attempting to harmonize our personal relationships and our domestic experience to us feeling maybe more attracted to putting ourselves out into the world, utilizing our spotlight energy to expressing ourselves. Leo has a lot of significations around self-expression. Now, again, once those planets start moving into Leo, they're going to start opposing Pluto in Aquarius. So there may be some features out in the collective, out in society, that might make it a little bit uncomfortable being our most authentic selves. I know that we've been experiencing a lot of censorship around the world, and in the United States in particular, and it may feel a little bit uncomfortable to be visible, and that is understandable. I think that we have to navigate those things gracefully. I think it's important to still be true to ourselves and to still speak out if we see injustices and things of that nature. But we might have to be a little bit cagey about it too. So it's a fine line. It's a paradox that we're trying to work through when Venus moves into Leo, and then when Jupiter moves into Leo as well. Chiron, one of the asteroids a lot of people talk about in astrology, is going to move into Taurus. Chiron is an asteroid that's associated with the centaur, also named Chiron. He was a teacher. He was a musician. He also sustained a wound that was unhealable. So he had a wound that he was unable to heal. And a lot of the Chiron significations talk about being a healer, but also healing others through a wound that we have difficulty healing for ourselves. It could be something where we feel wounded, but we need to utilize that energy maybe to help other people with that specific signification. Chiron has been in Aries for a number of months, where there might be a wound about stepping out on our own, about individuating, about taking a risk. Maybe we've been encouraging others to take risks, but we've been afraid to do it ourselves. When Chiron moves into Taurus, some of those wounds may be physical. They may be feelings of lack, feelings of scarcity, fear of making money, fear of resources, or what we have to do ethically to attain those resources. So those are some themes to think about with Chiron moving into Taurus. How do we start to heal our wounds with physicality, with our bodies, with our harmonizing our senses with our environment as well? That could be themes that we see when Chiron moves into Taurus on the 19th of June. On the 21st, the sun moves into Cancer. That is our summer solstice. So again, we're shifting the spotlight. Think of the sun as a large spotlight, where we're shining this big spotlight on Gemini planets, or on Gemini themes, I guess you could say, in the beginning of the month. How do we reconcile opposites? How do we reconcile ambiguity? Where are we needing more information? Where do we need to explore more or visit more flowers to gather the pollen of information? That's my favorite metaphor for Gemini, is like bees gathering pollen. When the sun moves into Cancer, the spotlight may be more on the more sensitive parts of our life, the more hidden parts of our life, the more private parts of our life. Instead of being overly social, we're taking that pollen back to the hive and making something with it, nurturing it, feeding the young, feeding the grubs or the larvae in the hive, right? We're trying to do something with that information. We may have to make some choices at that point as well. The other thing to think about of the summer solstice is the sun will actually change direction. Metaphorically, I guess you could say, visibly. It will start rising lower in the sky than normal. Than it did when it was rising in declination up to the summer solstice. That's what creates our length of days. When the sun rises higher in the sky in the northern hemisphere in the summer solstice here, the days lengthen. When we get to the summer solstice, that's the peak. That is the zenith. And then the sun starts to rise slightly lower in the sky and the days start to get shorter. So this is a time in a lot of ancient cultures where they thought about switches of direction, the death of one particular king or deity, and then the rise of another. This is where we might have felt like we had to draw a line in the sand with an ultimatum or something like that in the last degrees of Gemini. then we have to change our mind, right? Think of the crab being able to move sideways, forwards, backwards. All of these things are indicative of the sun in Cancer. On the 28th, Mars is going to move into Gemini. So Mars will improve its dignity. Mars will improve its ability to, well, improve or change. I guess Mars is not necessarily very comfortable in Taurus because that's a place where we're attempting to harmonize. And Mars's goal and mission is to sever, to separate. And now that energy is going to be moved into the Gemini area where we might be trying to create conflict or create separation, but instead of from sensory information or with the body, it's switched to the mind. We might have thoughts that could be a little bit difficult to deal with. Our nervous systems could be a little bit amped up. We could have difficulty communicating because a lot of the aggressive tendencies of Mars could be worked through the language of Gemini, through the ability to try to understand one another. And this is going to be really important when we are talking about Mars making a conjunction with Uranus into July. That's something that we'll keep our eyes on as well. Finally, Jupiter moves into Leo on the 30th of June. Okay, so this is a planet that moves signs once every 1.5 to 2 years, I guess you could say, depending on how fast it's moving. So you think about 12 years ago, like when the last time Jupiter was in Leo. Jupiter has a 12-year, what's called synodic cycle, returning to its previous position. So I remember this for me personally. When Jupiter was in Cancer, I had been working on an album. I was working on my first solo EP, I guess you could say, 4-song album. And I was nurturing it behind the scenes. I was working on it. I was doing all the things necessary. I was protecting it. And then when Jupiter was in Leo, it was released. I was putting it out into the world. So there might be something that we're nurturing behind the scenes with Jupiter in Cancer that we are finally releasing out into the world. Now, part of the challenge with that is that, again, it's going to be opposing Pluto and Aquarius. There are some things in the collective right now where we might be afraid of being observed. We have things where we are seeing things in the news where tech companies are starting to gather our personal data, where there's some fear of surveillance, right? Of every movement that we do or that we are making being surveyed and collected and maybe manipulated by big tech companies and things of that nature, by government institutions. So the visibility versus the fear of visibility tension is going to be something that's going to play out when those planets move into Leo and oppose Pluto and Aquarius. Okay, so those are our ingresses for the month. Solar phases. So this is the relationship of these planets to the sun and the switch of directions. So on the 8th of June, Uranus is going to emerge from under the beams of the sun as the morning star. Now, this is a little bit of a controversial technique because traditionally Uranus was one of the last planets discovered, and it was one of the last planets discovered because it was very difficult to see with the naked eye, right? So it was something that the invention of the telescope really helped us to see these outer planets, quote unquote, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So it's a little bit controversial because this isn't a visible planet, but I thought I would put it out there that when Uranus emerges as the morning star, I want you to think about maybe some of the insights that you're gaining today as we're listening to this on the 22nd of May. This is the seed that's being planted. Take a look at what's going on in the collective too. I have a feeling there's going to be really important news that is being revealed here as Uranus is going cazimi. We've had a lot of things going on in the collective. We've had a lot of, especially in America with the Congress recessed without allowing a vote for some of the funding for some of the more draconian measures that are trying to be pushed through in America right now. Keep an eye on those things and connect them with this June 8th type of experience where Uranus is emerging as the morning star at 2 degrees of Gemini. We are at turning points. We're at turning points for our ability to harness new ideas, for our ability to take in new information and data. Uranus is also going to be at the bending of the nodes this month. So a transition from increase of disruption and chaos coming through information, maybe moving through a sort of processing quality where we say which of these sort of little bits of information are factual, which of them are just noise and distraction. I think that's going to be part of the journey through June as well. On June the 12th, Mercury is going to move into its retrograde shadow at 16 degrees of Cancer. That means that that's the place that Mercury is going to retrograde back to during the month. And then at the end of the month, on the 29th, Mercury is going to make its station retrograde at 26 degrees of Cancer. Okay, so this is a period where we're reviewing mercurial things, where Mercury is going to be going under the beams of the sun, sort of into the underworld, if you want to think about this metaphorically, where we are kind of seeing, the ancients used to call it a psychopomp phase, where Mercury is guiding souls to the underworld. Now, practically, this could be memories that come up, ideas that come from our past, ideas that come from deep inside us that start bubbling into our consciousness. This could be something where if we did something rashly in the past, we might be reviewing that process and redoing it. I think that this is a time too to review our scarcity consciousness versus where we might have a surplus. So maybe we are very abundant in one part of our life, and we're reviewing what do we want to do with this abundance? Do we want to share our wealth with others? Do we want to become philanthropists on some level? Maybe there's a part of our life where we need to put energy so that we don't experience scarcity. All of those things are questions that can come up when Mercury is retrograde in the last section of Cancer. Mercury is a planet that questions things. It casts doubt. It's a really important quality because sometimes we need to question things. If we always assume things and take things at face value, we might be missing really important changes in our environment, and Mercury helps us to navigate those. Finally, our medium range view here, we have out-of-bounds planets and malefic enclosures. Last month, we had some benefic enclosures, which were nice, but this month, only malefic ones, only challenging ones. So first of all, Venus and Mercury are going to start the month out of bounds from the 4th of May all the way till June 6th for Venus. Mercury will be out of bounds from today, as I'm recording this, May 22nd, to June the 14th. The moon's going to be out of bounds from the 29th of May to June the 4th. And then we have Mercury in its malefic enclosure from June 10th to June 28th, from 12 degrees of Cancer to 26 degrees of Cancer. It's going to begin with the Mercury square to Saturn, one of the Aries Cancer squares that we talked about, and it will end when Mars moves into Gemini. The Venus malefic enclosure also ends when Mars moves into Gemini, so keep that in mind when we're talking about that later. The moon will be out of bounds from the 12th of June to the 17th, and then again from the 26th of June to July 1st. That Venus malefic enclosure is going to come at the very end of the month from the 25th to the 28th, from 13 degrees of Leo to 18 degrees of Leo. So a shorter pressure situation, but it might feel like pressure nonetheless. Pressure to perform, pressure to put ourselves out there. It begins with the Venus trine to Saturn, and then it ends with Mars moving into Gemini. I'll explain that in more greater detail with the chart as we go into it. Think about those out-of-bounds planets, though, as acting as sort of mavericks. They are technically, those planets are moving outside the normal declination path of the sun, the normal distance that the sun makes from the ecliptic. So they are acting outside of the realm of the king, or outside the realm of what is socially acceptable in more modern terms, right? So again, Venus, we might be attracted to things that we might not normally be attracted to. We are, maybe it's like we're giving ourselves a makeover and we're dyeing our hair a color we never would, or we're purchasing clothes that we would never wear. And then when Venus goes back in bounds, we're like, what were we thinking? This is a little different than I would normally wear, right? So that's the danger, but there is good things that can come out of that too. There's a lot of really inspirational artists that have Venus out of bounds. My favorite example, and one that always comes to the top of my mind, is Bjork, right? Bjork has Venus out of bounds, and she just kind of does her own thing. She doesn't conform to people's expectations, and she's created some really, really fascinating art through that. When Mercury's out of bounds, our communication style may be different. We may be saying things that we wouldn't normally say. Sometimes we censor ourselves. Mercury out of bounds says, well, why are we censoring ourselves? We might be saying things that we are thinking, but would be too afraid to say in some circumstances. We also could maybe get into some conflicts. When we say things we wouldn't normally say, oftentimes there's a reason we don't say that, because we're thinking about how those words might land and how they might affect someone else, if physically, emotionally, etc., intellectually. And that could lead to some conflict too. So I guess be careful about how you're communicating, but maybe there's ideas that come from thinking outside the box, from thinking, trying something new that you wouldn't normally try. That might be a Mercury out of bounds signification. Now with those malefic enclosures, those are short periods of time where we might just feel blocked, where we might feel like there's some heavy lifting going on. I often just recommend patience during those times. Sometimes the planets are not functioning at their highest capabilities, like with Venus in malefic enclosure. Getting the harmony that you desire might be delayed. And it's really not the end of the world, right? If you have 3 days where you can't really harmonize with someone, it'll pass, right? And not trying to force the issue could be something really important around then. Same thing with Mercury in malefic enclosure. Maybe you're wanting to communicate with somebody, but you're having really difficulty. There's factors that are involved with disconnects in communication. Patience is really the key. All right, that's our medium range view. Do me a huge favor, friends. If you are new to the channel, please like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. We've got some new friends here today. I'm so excited for my new friends stopping in. I'm really enjoying my experience in this game called Sky. I really enjoy connecting with people. It's very relaxing, and it's just fun. It's a game based on kindness and friendship, and it's really beautiful too. There's just a lot of really beautiful landscape to explore. And the best part of it, though, is the people. The best part is being able to communicate with people and have some kind of shared goals and working together. It's very cooperative. And that's something that's a deeply held and cherished value of mine. So being able to do that and connect with people, just doing something fun, I think we need a little bit of that in the world. So thanks to those of you who are connecting here today with me here. And yeah, just make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, follow me over at social media at Spencer Michaud on Instagram and Facebook, etc., wherever your social medias are. Okay, before we dive in, let's take a little stretch break too. We're going to be here a little while. I'm a fairly detailed person. Thoroughness is something that people have described my work as. And when we're doing that, we want to make sure, because Mars is in Taurus, that we're in harmony with our bodies. So stretch your hips out, get a drink of water, get a snack, dial in. Maybe you're doing something cool in the background while you're listening. Maybe you're making some art. Maybe you're gardening. Maybe you're cooking something. It's all good. I've got a cat with me here. He's kind of underneath on the footstool. He was the he was the wild child today. He was getting into everything, but now he's sleepy. I think he tuckered himself out, which is good. All right, let's dive into some of the daily transits. Now, the way that I like to do this, if you're new here, is I will take a 10-day section of the month called a decan, right? 10 degrees, deca means 10. And we will sort of give an overview of what is going on. The great way of doing this, I think, is, if you're diehard, you can listen to all 3 hours of this at once. Or if you want to come back to it as well, you can take it in little bite-sized chunks and say, what's going to be going on for the next few days? Like, what do I need to prepare for? The reason we do this is so that we can prepare our minds for this, and that we can prepare for making choices in the moment that could be facilitated and supported by the planetary energy, rather than banging our heads against it. This is why I like the tagline in my channel, make friends with fate. We make friends with fate by understanding what is being asked of us in that moment, what is possible, what isn't possible, what may feel like swimming upstream, and what might feel like going with the flow. Now, we're going to start the month with the Sun in Gemini 2. So here are the decan flashcards. that I've created. They also are available for download when you purchase the deck and webinars on my site. Check out the store. Each of the 10 degree sections associated with a tarot card. And in this case, the tarot cards of Gemini are some of the more difficult ones that we see in the minor arcana. So we have the Eight of Swords for Gemini 1, where we have someone who is bound and blindfolded, potentially paralyzed by too many options with this Jupiter-ruled decan in a Mercury-ruled sign. So too many thoughts, too many ideas. In Gemini 2, which is going to be the time period from May 31st to June 10th, here we have someone who is trying to reconcile all that information, all of those contradictions, all of those feelings of being pulled in multiple directions. And it's not an easy thing to do. This is a Mars-ruled face in a Gemini, in the Gemini sign, in the Mercury sign. So there may be feelings of anxiety. I think that frustration, anxiety are something like that keep us up at night. You see this in this card of the Nine of Swords, like a nightmare that we're experiencing, where we're just like, we got so many, I don't know about you, but I've had moments in my life where my brain was just racing and I just couldn't sleep because there was just too many barking dogs, you know, inside of our head, right? The book T, which is associated with the Golden Dawn, calls this the Lord of Despair and Cruelty. The other theme with Gemini 2 that we kind of touched on a little bit is that Mars, the face ruler of this decan, likes to utilize the resources of the sign ruler to create conflict. So in this case, Gemini's weapons are words. So the despair and cruelty that we can have is sometimes through being really toxically verbal, right? Verbal toxicity can come through this decan. So one of the cautionary tales with this is trying to figure out how to soften our speech, or how to not lash out or project some of our pain onto others, especially with words that can be very, very hurtful or cutting. So watch yourself with that when the sun is moving through Gemini 2. The Austin Coppock's 36 Faces calls this decan the hermaphrodite, and that is based on the story of the daimon Cybele, which was a god that had both masculine and feminine qualities, but was feared by other gods for being too powerful and split that masculine and feminine part of themselves in half. And much of the story is about searching for the other half. So there might be something where we feel like we're missing something in our life during this decan as well, where we're searching for something externally that maybe we already possess potentially. I think that a lot of the advice that I give with people really struggling with this decan, this is why I have Venus in this decan. So I'm trying to harmonize all of the different information that's coming through me, all the different perspectives in the world. And I love communicating with others. I try to soften some of the I don't know, arguments that people have sometimes, I guess, like through this Mars decan. But I think that the advice I like to give people is that the things that we project both positively and negatively onto others, there's a habit with Gemini to project their shadow onto someone else, to create an externalized demon, right? An externalized force that is something they might be really not loving about themselves, okay? Subconsciously or consciously. The same is true for projecting some of the good qualities onto someone else. They may be searching for a partner to complete them because they see a quality in the other, the externalized other, that they would love to have for themselves. I think the healthiest way of dealing with this decan and the anxiety that it produces is recognizing our own shadow, owning it, and integrating it back in without projecting it onto others. And then also owning our positive qualities, pursuing the things that we want to create in our life, rather than saying, well, I have to have some externalized person or relationship to be able to manifest that. How do I do that on my own? How do I do that? How do I integrate the good parts of myself that I'm projecting onto others? Sometimes it's just, how do we create confidence rather than projecting it onto someone else? So those are the other things. A couple fixed stars in this decan. Aldebaran at 10 degrees of Gemini is related to integrity. It's a royal fixed star that grants a lot of power, but only if you are staying true to your integrity. So I think Gemini sometimes has the temptation to bend the rules, to go outside of the ethical norm. Aldebaran is a fixed star that can lead to a lot of real challenges if that is the case. Aldebaran's related to a general in mythology called Ahura Mazda, and he required integrity at all times. So that story filters through that fixed star. Rigel or Rigel, I'm not exactly sure of the pronunciation of that fixed star, but it's 17 degrees of Gemini, is related to teaching and learning about the intake of information. I like to compare that one to the drinking from the fire hose of information. I have Venus on this fixed star, so I love taking in tons of information and then processing it and communicating it back in a way that is digestible. So that's the theme in this decan potentially that is coloring it. Okay, so that is the Gemini 2 that we start our month out with. I would be remiss if I didn't start mentioning that the first kind of entrance into this month is through the full moon that happens the day before. So we have a second full moon that's happening on May 31st. So we start the moon with start the month with a peak kind of lunar experience where we are attempting to take action on our multiplicity of ideas, where there's something coming to a head where we're saying, we have all these ideas floating around. We've got to do something with it. This is the tension that's arising at the beginning of the month, okay? Now, at the beginning of the month, we've talked about this, but Venus is going to start the month out of bounds from the 4th of May all the way to June 6th. Mercury will still be out of bounds from today, the 22nd of May, to the 14th of June. And then really the first thing that we're experiencing on the 1st of June is Mercury moving into Cancer. So this is something that we were talking about briefly with the ingresses, but the transition from Mercury in its own home sign of Gemini into the lunar temple or the lunar sign, the moon-ruled sign of Cancer. So again, communication will become more intuitive, more nonverbal in some ways, more emotional. We might be communicating our feelings. I have Mercury in Cancer, retrograde, in the last 10 degree section where the retrograde is this year. And oftentimes I have to, there's a filter from my brain and my feelings to my mouth. And it's almost like I'm having to filter it through 10 layers of water. Like it's like screaming underwater sometimes. When I was really young, if I got really upset, I couldn't speak. Cancer is said to be a mute sign. So there might be times where we get so emotional that we can't really communicate through words. One of the things that is enhanced with Mercury in Cancer, though, is communicating through emotions. I was someone who communicated through music. I still do that. I still communicate. It's funny, like this game I'm playing. One of the features of it is you can collect these musical instruments and just jam with other people. So a lot of times in the game, if I'm meeting someone new, a lot of times I'm just communicating through music rather than through words. So think about how you can transition from just only verbal communication to nonverbal communication. Sometimes we can communicate through hugs or through like supporting one another. Sometimes it's just through presence. It could be through just an emotional energy that we're giving. We're giving space to people in communication. Sometimes that can be really helpful as well. On the 3rd, Mercury is going to trine the North Node. So let me do this here. Let me share my screen so you can see what I'm seeing. You can see what I see. That's not what we want to do. Where is it? Okay. There it is. Okay. So you can see on the screen, we started off with Mercury right here moving into Cancer. And then we are going to move forward a few days. You know, just to give you your bearings, Mars will still be in Taurus, trying to disrupt our physical comfort in whatever way. Saturn is still in Aries. forcing us to state what our values are, maybe even making it very difficult to stay true to those values sometimes. Like the second 10-degree section of Aries says, hey, like you have to make a royal decree, and that could be really uncomfortable. It might not be a choice either. Sometimes we have to share who we are and what we believe in, even if it's dangerous, even if it's a risk to do so. And all of those planets here, Saturn and Neptune, are going to be squaring Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter. Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter are trying to express emotions, tenderness. Aries is not about tenderness. Aries is about the blunt instrument or the sharp axe that is just hacking its way through to get to the new beginning. And that can be really uncomfortable when we have other planets that are kind of asking for sensitivity. So this sensitivity versus aggressive yang versus yin energy is going to be really prominent. You can see here that the sun's separating from Uranus in Gemini. Okay, Pluto's still in Aquarius, retrograde. So we're reviewing some of the corruption that has been arising in the collective, especially when it comes to people that have been exiled or othered or cast aside. We're seeing a lot of corruption with that around the world. And how do we deal with that? How do we transform the way we treat people that aren't necessarily in the centralized power or empowered, etc.? Those are questions that we're going to be answering. The nodes of the moon, we have the North Node in Pisces still, but it's going to be moving into Aquarius in July. So we have a nodal shift that's happening in very, very shortly. And this is the last month of North Node in Pisces, an increase in our desire to escape or our need to accept a divine plan that might be better than our human plan. We are seeing a decrease with the South Node in Virgo in our attachment to form. I often will teach from my own experience that form is ephemeral. Form is changeable. The essence that animates that form is more eternal. And a lot of times we will go through experiences where we are very sad about the release of a specific form. And that forces us to understand and connect to the essence underneath it. I've worked with people recently that have lost cherished fur companions. And one of the things that I counsel in those situations is the love that you have to give is not going to die with that animal, with that form. I've realized this firsthand, it doesn't take anything away from the unique individual spirit that each of our pets is, or our animal companions are, or people in our life. But I think one thing that can help us to work through that grief is realizing that the love that we gave to them is still present, that the love for them is still present, and that love can take on a new vehicle, right? Maybe it's a new pet, maybe it's a new companion, maybe it's something else. Its form is changing, but that love, that nurturing, that companionship can find a new form. It may take some time. Sometimes we have to experience the lack of something to truly appreciate it. But these are themes with the nodes in these positions, is releasing that attachment to form, but understanding essence and meaning behind it as well. This June 3rd date, Mercury is going to be making a trine. So let's go to June 3rd. So here you see Mercury making a trine to the North Node. Our ability to see essence versus form could be enhanced in one-on-one relationships during this period as well. So that's something to consider. We are going to be experiencing a square with Neptune, though. This is one of the Aries Cancer square moments that we were talking about earlier, where we have these Aries planets that are encouraging us to take a risk. They may be encouraging a yang expression. With Neptune in Aries, we may be falling, I guess, victim to a potential toxic masculinity that we may feel that might makes right, but it may be an illusion. We may feel like we have to do something by ourselves, but that also may be an illusion. Neptune often will cloud our clarity. It will make something very glamorous and make us attracted to it and make society attracted to the glamour of where it is moving through. So with Neptune moving through Aries, violence is glamorized, risk-taking is glamorized, individual effort is glamorized. And in some cases, it can be warranted. In other cases, it can be a delusion. So we have to work through our desire to ask questions in our relationships with the ability to separate fact from fiction when it comes to our own individual efforts. There's tension between Mars and Neptune here, right? There's tension between our ability to want to communicate in our very sensitive personal relationships in a loving way, and maybe the challenge of figuring out who are we in those relationships versus who the other person is. Okay, like that's always really difficult sometimes, because in a lot of relationships the energy merges together, right? We feel merged with one another, and sometimes it can be confusing as to where our feelings start and where the other person's begins. So those might be some of the challenging questions there. I would also say too, just the information that you're receiving, probably the intuitive messages that you're receiving could be clouded and shrouded in a subjective perspective. So this is a danger with Mercury in Cancer. This is something I've fallen victim to in my life. I will try to read nuance in every situation, and sometimes that nuance isn't correct. Like if you see someone say something a certain way, this is the Cancerian way of evaluating someone's communication. Oftentimes the words that they say are not what we are paying attention to. We'll pay attention to the tone. We'll pay attention to their facial features and their body language when they're speaking. A lot of that is a trauma response, because a lot of people who have Cancerian placements grew up in environments where they had to pay very close and special attention to the adults in the room and read behind the between the lines, I guess you could say, of what someone was saying. And when we bring that into our adulthood, that can be utilizing a tool for a situation where it might be inappropriate. I often preach about utilizing the tools for the current problem rather than the tools for a problem in our past. Because if we use the tools for a problem in our past, oftentimes we just get stuck in that old narrative and we just recreate the problem over and over and over again. So at this case, how do we become clear in communication and maybe not mistake someone's tone or someone's body language? We want to just ask clarifying questions. The other thing I would say too is don't make assumptions about how someone feels. Ask for clarity, right? It's part of the 4 agreements is don't make assumptions. Like that can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings. On the 7th, Venus is back in bounds. So here's Venus at 23 degrees of Cancer, back in bounds, applying to a conjunction with Jupiter. So this Venus is finally, we're kind of waking up from Venus's quality of acting out of its normal desires, I guess you could say. We might be waking up and be like, oh my God, where have I been? What am I wearing? What is this neon green thing that I'm wearing? Where did I get this? Where is my beautiful wife? How did I get here? If you were quoting the talking heads, right? So this might be an experience where we're kind of waking up from something where we're like, oh, that was really outside the norm. And maybe we learned something from that experience. Maybe we learned that we really like wearing turquoise and orange together. This is kind of a throwback to the in Sky, this multiplayer online game. You can dye you have these little cloaks that you get. You can dye them different colors, and I've been experimenting with the different colors, and maybe it's a Venus out of bounds thing where I'm wearing a lot of orange and green in the game, like this combination of colors that I would probably never wear in real life. I love wearing green, but orange is just it's too loud for me in real life. But maybe we can be what we want to be with Venus out of bounds, like, and experiment with it. When Venus is back in bounds, the experimenting phase might be, the noise on it might be reduced a little bit. And some of the realizations you might want to keep integrated and incorporated. Some of them you might be like, that wasn't for me. I'll let that go. Okay. That leads us to the last quarter moon that we were discussing earlier. So here is the last quarter moon, the square between the sun in Gemini and the moon in Pisces. So let me go back a few hours here so that you can get let's get the degrees right. We want to be sticklers for the details a little bit. So here is 17 degrees of Gemini, 17 degrees of Pisces, mostly because they were in decans that weren't related. I'm going to check in with the chat. This is a good time. Check in with the chat. Let's see. Ani says, I'm pulling tarot and oracle cards while listening today, getting insight on the transits. Ooh, nice. Let me know what you get. I would love to hear that, Ani. I'd love to see if we can co-create the oracles, right? Co-create with this. Javier says, amazing song references. Thank you, Fred. I'm an 80s child, so I'll bring out some of the old school. Javier says, I was just listening to the Maze episode, so you're still playing the game. Maybe I should join. Javier, I think you would really enjoy it. It is, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm not sleeping as much as I should. That's probably the only downside, is that I love being in the world so much that it's hard to get regular sleep. So if that's a problem for you, know that going in. But I would say that the spirit of the game is helping each other, growing friendships, communicating from people from all walks of life all over the world. And if that's something that appeals to you and you like spending time in beautiful natural spaces, I think it is a really relaxing experience. It's something that I've had a lot of fun doing. And I've met some really amazing people and had some really deep conversations with them on that place as well. One of which stopped in today and said hi. So yeah, Javier, if you do, let me know. Let me know in the Discord, and I'll show you around a little bit. You can hold hands and show people around. It's very adorable. So yeah, just join us. It'll be fun. All right. So this last quarter moon, sun in Gemini 2, moon in Pisces 2. And oftentimes when we have the moon waxing, we want to increase the quality that the moon is moving through. When the moon is waning, all right, as it is in this case, the last quarter moon, there is tension between the sun and the moon. Think of the sun as the soul's intention, and the moon as the vehicle to collect that intention or collect that light to be able to manifest it on the physical plane. This is how the ancient Greeks, ancient philosophers would think about this. The waning last quarter moon will show us that we need to potentially reduce the quality that the moon is moving through to be able to achieve the goal of the sun. That is how I've started to philosophize about it. This is kind of my own take on it, that is piggybacking off of the beautiful work that Mr. Austin Coppock does in 36 Faces. Like he outlines a lot of this in this book. He's a genius. I hope that when the book is republished that all of you will support him and purchase it. So what quality are we reducing? I think we're reducing our overconfidence on some level of taking something completely on faith. This is one of the decans that's associated with just harmonizing the imaginal world with the physical world. So this could be something where we are just letting go and letting divine. I think that we need to maybe reduce a little bit of that at this juncture. There will be other points where we need to increase our faith, where we need to increase our ability to just let go and let happen, right? But in this case, we might need to explore a little bit. We might need to utilize our rational qualities. We might need to reduce our emotionality slightly so that we can make a wise decision. I think that if we reduce if we're in an experience where we're overly emotional or overly, I don't know, overly surrendering our power, right, to an entity that, I don't know, whether it's spirit or whatnot. I'm always in favor of surrendering to spirit on most times, but this is something where we utilize our rational capabilities. All right. let's see here. Uranus, the same day, is emerging from under the beams. So as we are reducing our emotionality of overly trusting maybe a flawed intuition or something of that nature, Uranus is going to be separating from the sun by 15 degrees and also pretty close. Okay, this isn't going to be happening yet. This will happen in the next few days, but it's pretty close to being at the bending of the nodes. That'll be exact on the 12th, so 4 days after, but it is worth, I think, exploring maybe simultaneously. So Uranus is a planet that shakes us out of lethargy. It is sort of a lightning bolt of awareness. Robert Schmidt would compare it to a transcendental sun, which is like a collective inspiration on some level. The other author that I like to reference with Uranus is Liz Green. And I've been reading a really incredible book called The Art of Stealing Fire, where she compares the Uranian myth, much like Richard Tarnas does in Cosmos and Psyche, to Prometheus. Prometheus was a Greek titan, I guess you could say, or demigod that would steal fire, that stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. This is a cautionary tale, I think, in a lot of respects. There can be some aspirational qualities where we are trying to become divine or godlike, or we have we get an insight into the way the universe actually works or something of that nature, and that can be positive. It can break us out of an old pattern, an old habit, an old routine that needs to be shaken up. It can also lead to the most punishable offense in ancient Greek philosophy, which is hubris. If we try to become godlike, it can often lead to an attempt to harness a power that is easily fallen into chaos, that can easily become uncontrollable. And in Liz Green's book, she talks a lot about Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster, the ability to raise something back from the dead in that case, and then it running amok. So oftentimes when you see Uranus move into a new sign, a new decan, you will see people attempting new progressive, I guess you could call them, ideas, but not necessarily considering the ramifications and consequences of those actions. To me, the Uranus and Gemini conversation is, you think about Gemini as a communication sign, you think about it as a sign of intelligence. A lot of the challenges around artificial intelligence that we've talked about at great length on the channel, that we've been very critical of for good reason, because there is some real challenges to that technology and how fast it's advancing with big tech not necessarily considering the ramifications for the environment and for our humanness. So there may be something that some more powerful realizations around technology, around communication, maybe around AI that emerge with Uranus as it emerges as the morning star. It may be also a turning point because we're seeing the Uranus at the bending of the nodes. I don't know if it's just my algorithm or not, but the noise has increased. The criticism of AI has increased in the algorithmic spaces that I inhabit. There's a lot of people that are, I think, rightfully understanding that this is a very dangerous technology for the environment, for our water supply, for our farmland, for the communities that the big data centers are being built in, for the possibility of those data centers being used to weaponize surveillance against citizens. And I think people are starting to get kind of fed up with the type of investment that's being made with United States tax dollars that is taking away from other types of things that people need, like healthcare, et cetera. So this might be a turning point where the popularity of this bubble, I think that's where the bubble might start to pop potentially. I really feel like the getting clear on what the reality of it versus what the hope for it is going to start becoming prominent. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some positive uses for this. A lot of people are like, well, we could use it for medical interventions and things like that. That's fine. But when people are using it for generative AI qualities, when they're making images that steal people's work, that steal other artists' work, when they are using it to create, I don't know, propaganda or to distort the truth, when they are using it to, I don't know, the laundry list goes on. I mean, if you've been following along the channel long enough, you know my concerns about it, right? So this might be a moment where we're moving towards trying to get the truth, where we're trying to weed through some of the information to find what is actually practical around it. Ani says, I'm pulling Tao tarot cards, which is like an I-Ching hybrid. Lovely art for yin vibes. For a Rider-Waite clarification spread, pulled the Five of Swords reverse, the Hangman, and Strength. Oh, that's nice. It's an indication to let go of outcomes and to recognize who I'm dealing with, not to push and pick my timing, ultimately worry about my individual preparedness to be successful. You know, it's interesting you pulled the Five of Swords reversed, Ani, because Five of Swords is associated with Pluto. It's associated with where Pluto is in the zodiac right now, Aquarius 1, to be more specific. And reversed kind of feels like a retrograde. So we've got Pluto retrograde in Aquarius 1. You have the Hanged Man, which is associated with Pisces, the sign Pisces, or actually Neptune. I think it's actually Neptune instead of Pisces. Sorry, I think I crossed my references there. But maybe seeing things from a new perspective. Maybe this speaks to the Uranus at the bending of the nodes, where we had all this, a lot of hype for AI from certain factors of society, and maybe some of that hype starts to die down and people are starting to push back. The challenge I think people have is that municipalities, governments, big tech are trying to force these huge data centers onto communities, even when the communities are pushing back on it and say, we don't want this. This is not what we want. We don't want this in our communities. And they're doing it anyway, right? That's where it really starts to become not necessarily in service of humanity. And we've talked also about how some of those big tech CEOs want to make intelligence a commodity, a utility, I guess you could say. And the very real fears of us becoming so dependent on that technology that we stop using our own critical thinking skills and abilities. So those are all concerns. Like, a lot of people are trying to figure out what are the ethics of this before we go down the rabbit hole that we can't get out of. This is something you see in society all the time, where how do we deal with a new technology, a new anything, and consider the ramifications before we do the damage, rather than just doing the damage and be like, we'll figure it out later. I mean, it's just, I wish humanity could do that a little bit more, right? I would say the Strength card is related to Leo. So I think that it's interesting. I feel like you have the oppositions between Aquarius and Leo in that spread there that we're going to talk about later today. Javier says, humans can't be trusted to use things for good yet, huh? Half joking. No, they can't. At least the most, the greediest and the most insensitive of us can't be trusted. And usually those are the people right now that have the most power. So that's, and they're ruining it for the rest of us, right? Okay. Oh my God, Five of Swords, right? Ani says, yeah, it represents downsizing and backtracking to make sure I don't overcommit and then underdeliver. Staying below your complexity ceiling is really smart, Ani, for sure. Ani says, they are building the biggest data center, twice the size of the current biggest, by SLC, running the landscape, water, and air, ruining the landscape, water, and air. The lake is almost gone, and these centers toxic with lights and noise. I mean, we're in lockstep with that, Ani. I've been getting more and more vocal about these things. I don't really want them in my community or anybody's community, really. I don't think it's necessary, and I think it's wasteful and actively harmful to this beautiful planet that we inhabit. It is externalizing costs for profit. It's externalizing the environmental damage onto rural communities that already are struggling, and it is destroying the beautiful planet, the water systems, the aquifers, in the name of profit and surveillance. And that's something that I'm not able to support. Salt Lake City, Ani says. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so good. We're getting some more clarity with all this, right? So Uranus emerging as the morning star, some realizations around this, I think, around the hubris that we have been discussing. Not to say that Uranus is going to be all bad, but a lot of times you will hear in pop astrology a lot of really positive smoke about those outer planets. I am of the opinion that every planet is not necessarily good and bad. It was not thought of the same way in ancient cultures. Conducive to life versus inconducive to life. The ability to, because here's the thing, when we say growth is good and death is bad, that's not how nature works, right? Growth is one phase of a unified cycle. Death and decay and returning things back to the earth is another part. So in that regard, Mars and Saturn play very useful roles within that cycle. Mars can sever and separate things and return them back to the earth. Saturn causes that rot and decay that will eventually become new life, right? It can help with structure and things of that nature. So there is, and I would say that if I take this way of thinking to the benefic planets, Venus and Jupiter, sometimes we have too much of a good thing. If we have too much moisture, if we have too much heat, if we have too much of growth, that can choke out either the nutrition. It can cause rot and decay and mold and things of that nature. So it's all about balance. And I think the same thing is true with these outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They're not necessarily good or bad forces, but they can try to influence individuals to wield those forces for their own individual desires. In this case, profit. And when that happens, those forces are not necessarily controllable by individuals. And that's why a lot of people are fearing things like the data centers of artificial intelligence, because it can get away from these people that aren't really working with foresight. All right. I've got a curious cat behind me that I think needs to go explore somewhere else before he turns the internet off. So do me a favor, friends. Take a stretch break for a second, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'm going to get this little guy who's on one today where he needs to be. There he is. And we're back. I love hanging out with my fur babies. I've got two big wizard boys, Gandalf and Radagast. They're big domestic long hair, Maine Coon mix types, blue tuxedo boys, and they're super sweet and loving, and but sometimes they get a little mischievous, and the internet connection is behind some of the stuff behind me here, and they will go exploring, and there have been times where they've disconnected the internet, so that's why they can't necessarily be allowed to do that while I'm doing this live. Ani says, the dust is tragic and is already horrible air quality, and now the energy output is toxic to life. There you go. So some very real concerns about the negative ramifications of a technology. Ani says, I've got a meeting in a minute. Got to go. Thanks, Spencer. Thank you, Ani. Thank you for stopping in. Thank you for your insights today. Appreciate you, friend. Javier says, I was just taking a nap with a fur baby. That's one of the great joys of this life, isn't it, Javier? I have my babies love to spoon on the couch. You know, sometimes I'll fall asleep on the couch and they'll just be like little spoon boys. And they're big too. They're like between 17 and 18 pounds. So you just got this giant ass cat there cuddling. It's awesome. I love it. But I digress. Okay, let's get back to it. So we are getting through the first decan of Gemini, and we have, let's see here. Let me find my spot. All right, we just were talking about Uranus emerging as the morning star in the 8th. This is actually bringing us to a really nice moment, I think, too. Maybe this realization that humanity needs to be a little bit more humble in the face of nature. Maybe that we don't need to create growth at the cost of our fresh drinking water. Maybe that we don't need to pursue profit all the time, and in lieu of some of the more intangible things that create wealth in our life, like time and health and relationships and all of those types of things. That realization that we have with Uranus at the bending of the nodes emerging could lead to a really beautiful moment with Venus and Jupiter coming together in the 3rd 10-degree section of Cancer. You can see that here. This is on the 9th. Okay, so here is, these are hours. So let's go forward. Let's put the sun back at noon. And then here we go, June 9th. There it is. So this is about 25 degrees of Cancer. On a fixed star called Procyon, actually. Procyon is in a constellation related to the little dog. They called it the little dog. I think it's Sirius Minor. I could be wrong on that. But the fixed star itself in the little dog, it actually reminds me of raccoons, because I had a experience where there were some prominent placements. I believe it was a new moon on Procyon, where I was out there just looking at the stars and just contemplating life, and I had a whole troop of baby raccoons that just came right up and walked across my feet and were looking up at me like, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "Hey, what's up, Procyon?" You know, it was a really fascinating manifestation of that energy. So the themes associated with Procyon are some kind of, Bernadette Brady talks about fireworks, like something beautiful but ephemeral. This is something that often will talk about some good fortune that arises but isn't necessarily permanent. In this 10-degree section of Cancer, we might be attracted to luxuries or luxurious tastes. We may have an awareness of some abundance in our life that helps to alleviate a feeling of scarcity. I would also say another manifestation of this is, how can you become just, I guess, radically generous? You know, like, how do you become so giving in your life? If you have more than you need, how can you alleviate someone else's suffering and balance out the have and the have-nots, right? How do you become philanthropic if you have more than you need? This is one of the great questions, I think, of our society and capitalism is, and living in this stage of capitalism is, how do we bring balance back to those that want to just keep taking and taking and taking, and those that don't have enough? And it starts, I think, with just personally being able to find balance within our own life, and to work towards it as a community, to work towards holding people in power and in wealth accountable, but also to just be generous with our time, with our resources. Sometimes what we have in abundance is not just money, or maybe it's not money at all. Sometimes what we have in abundance is time, or love, or information, or knowledge. All of those things we can learn to be generous with and share with others. And that is a great way to create reciprocity, to be able to create good feelings, to be able to have the types of experiences that we normally associate with Venus and Jupiter, of things that we want to create in our life. So I think that instead of considering with the Venus and Jupiter conjunction, oh, what expensive thing can I get? What nice toy or treat can I have? I think a more, not to say that you might not experience that. There's nothing wrong with having some treats in life. But I think on an even more satisfying level, thinking about how you can help those that may have less with your abundance of time, talent, information, resources, whatever it might be. I'll tell you what, uplifting others through that is something that it's one of those things that's not, it's not easy to take that feeling away, you know? It's not as ephemeral as form. It is something that is essence and infused with essence. So this is a good opportunity to practice that. All right. Uh, oh, Jiva Maya's here. What's up, friend? Says, hey, Spencer and community. Only dropping in briefly, but greetings from Liverpool. I did it. I moved, Spencer. Nice. Oh, nice to see you, Jiva. I hope everything's going well your way. I'm so really proud of you for making the move, friend, for taking the leap. Um, Jiva and I worked together with moving and making some changes in their life. So I'm really happy to hear that, friend. So thanks for stopping in and let me know that you're here. I love being able to see my friends stop in, and especially ones where we're connecting from across the pond, right? When we're across nations and oceans, we need more of that. Like, I'm not really a huge believer in artificial borders and things like that. I feel like we're all citizens of this great planet. And the more that we can realize that and make those connections, I think the better off we're going to be moving forward as community. So thanks for being here, friend. All right, Javier says that they are having the Jupiter Venus conjunction on their birthday. That's awesome, Javier. I'm excited for you with that. That's because that's going to be baked into your solar return. And so that energy might be something that you can bring throughout the entire year ahead. And I know for you, it's going to be softening one of the more difficult chart placements that you have too. So maybe there's some good stuff on the horizon, friend. And it all starts from just generosity, from the generosity of spirit. I know you have so much to give, Javiera, and it doesn't have to be one particular form. There's all sorts of ways to be generous and to tap into that spirit. So wishing you the best on your birthday there, friend. Okay. So let's talk about the 10th. The 10th, so we have a really beautiful moment on the 9th, and then we start kind of getting into a little bit of a bumpy patch in the middle of the month here. So when we go forward from the 10th here, we have the separation now between Venus and Jupiter, and we have Mercury receiving a square from Saturn. So 13 degrees of Aries and Cancer. And what's happening once Mercury makes the square to Saturn is Mercury will start to be in between the rays of Mars on one side and the rays of Saturn on the other, okay? Without a planet breaking it up with its own ray. This is called a malefic enclosure. This is where the pressures of planets that are a little bit more difficult to deal with are making it harder for the planet that is enclosed to carry out its desires. In this case, Mercury in Cancer 2 is associated with communicating emotions, communicating love, communicating nurturing, creating a safe space for people to communicate and to grow in healthy ways behind the scenes. Like Austin in this beautiful book, 36 Faces, calls it the walled garden, Deccan. I think that Saturn, the square between Saturn and Mercury, says we're trying to communicate deep feelings, but we are feeling a lot of pressure to carry out our own self-interest, to state our own values rather than to harmonize those values with others. And that's going to be pressure that we're going to feel in addition to the pressure of Mars in Taurus. So Mars in Taurus is going to be sextiling Mercury, but it's still going to be enclosing it. The Mars in Taurus second decan says our routines are getting disrupted. Our ability to show up and do just enough and then to rest, the balance between work and play, a little bit disrupted. So our ability to communicate with our family, with our partners in a deep, emotional, sensitive way, we could be feeling a lot of pressure because we're being forced to take new risks. We're being forced into start making new starts with Saturn and Aries, of stating our own values. And to do so, we might be having to work really hard. Our routines might be getting disrupted. We might be really uncomfortable with having to make that new start. It could be putting a lot of pressure on us. A lot of us who are very averse to visibility in some circumstances, sometimes when you, like, for example, When I'm doing my advertisement for my Deccan walk that I do each year, it's a little bit uncomfortable because I know that people need to know about the service to take it and to participate in it. But the thing that the advertising part of it is not something that I'm that I super enjoy. Like I'm not a super hyper social media person, and some of it puts a lot of pressure. Those are the types of feelings that we could get. Like we know that we have to do these things, but we're kind of buckling under the pressure, and that might make our communications with others a little bit more curt or a little bit less sensitive than we might desire that they be around this period of time. So this enclosure of Mercury is happening from the 10th to the 28th, and an 18-day period where we might feel a little bit stuck. We might not have the ability to communicate in as sensitive a way as we would like. We might be feeling a lot of pressure to put ourselves out there. We might be, the Gemini and Virgo areas of your chart might feel a little stuck too, because Mercury is the host or the steward of those two signs. Let's see. Javier says, "Oh, I'm excited. I will do my best." You can do it, Javier. I believe in you, friend. I believe in you. Okay, so something to remember with the malefic enclosures. There is oftentimes other areas of life that we can focus on. Let's say communication isn't strongly supported when Mercury is in malefic enclosure. You know what is in pretty good shape still? Venus and Jupiter. They're not being malefically enclosed. Maybe we need to do some art. Maybe we need to do some charity work. Maybe we need to volunteer and share our abundance with others. Maybe it's not through asking questions. Maybe it's just through showing acts of love and kindness. There's always ways to focus on what is supported in the chart when other things aren't supported. Okay, that to me is a really important way of mitigating some of the challenging transits that we inevitably go through almost daily, weekly, right? Is how do we focus on what is supported in the chart instead of trying to bash our heads against the brick wall, literally in the malefic enclosure case on some level. Okay, how do we shift gears to what is supported in the chart? And in this case, I would really focus on the Cancer 3 Venus and Jupiter placements potentially. All right, so that brings us to the next decan. So we've gotten through the first 10-degree section of Gemini, or the second 10-degree section, I should say. Now we move to Gemini 3. Let's take this opportunity to stretch. Do me a huge favor if you're still here with me. Thank you so much for spending time with me. Appreciate all of you. Give me a like if you can. Easiest thing to do to support the channel is to like the video so that more people can see it on their algorithms. Subscribe to the channel. Stretch your hips and your shoulders out. Get a drink of water. Move around a little bit. You know, just get some blood flow. And then subscribe to the channel. You know, hit that notification bell if you're new. Sign up for the newsletter. If you want to make a material donation to the work I'm doing here today, you can purchase Super Chat or go to buymecoffee.com. And also, go check out Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. Some really cool stuff coming out over there. Okay, so let's go to Gemini 3. Let's go. There was like 3 songs trying to come out at once there, but they all just like ran into each other. Let's Go Fly a Kite. Something and something else. Oh, the stream of consciousness, I tell you. All right, so let's take a look at the Gemini 3 slide now. So remember, we started out with too many options that maybe made us feel a little bit paralyzed, the exploration phase. We had a little bit of anxiety about being pulled in a number of different directions, making choices. Now in Gemini 3, it may feel like one of the directions or multiples of the directions need to be released or need to be assassinated in this case to be able to breathe life into the choice that we want to nurture. All right. Here in this card, the Ten of Swords is one of the more grisly cards. We see the 10 swords in the back of a figure, like, and you could really talk about the death of one twin in the story of Castor and Pollux, which is one of the myths associated with Gemini. One was mortal, one was immortal. They got in a battle with another set of twins, and the mortal twin died. And the immortal twin was very sad, very lonely, and petitioned Zeus to allow his sibling to live on Olympus at various times, where they had to exchange time between Hades and Olympus, which is kind of ironic because they weren't ever truly together. Do you know what I mean? There's some kind of weird paradox happening there. But this decan is called the Lord of Ruin. Its opposite decan is the Ten of Wands in Sagittarius 3, which shows a figure carrying burdens, trying to get to the finish line. This is the opposite of that. This says you can't carry all of those ideas. You can't carry all those burdens. It's just not even possible, right? So there is this energy of letting go of some imagined pathways. There is this energy of feeling like we have to make a stark contrast between that which is good or bad. There's ultimatums that come through this decan. There is a daimon in this decan called Praxidike, the executor of justice. That's why Austin Coppock calls it an executioner's sword. My caution to you in Gemini 3, so I'll give you a caution and I'll give you something that can help you with it. The caution would be when we make ultimatums, when we see things in black or white, which is often a feature of Gemini 3, this decan often will require us to make a backtrack. And it is spoken to with the journey of the sun going ambitiously to the top, right? Think about sometimes we think of Gemini as like, oh, the child or like whatever. Like Gemini is one of the most ambitious signs in the zodiac. It is when the sun is climbing to its peak, right? And I think that the irony is that when it gets to where it's going, it changes directions. It changes its mind for whether it wants to or not. You see this with the president of the United States. He has even a nickname for it, right? Where he makes all these declarative, ultimative statements and then eventually has to backtrack. That is built into the Gemini transition to Cancer. The changing of the direction of the declination of the sun, how high it rises in the sky each day. So be very careful about making declarative statements that you might eventually have to backtrack off of, because that can create just more stress for you. That can create more collateral damage. I think that a better way of thinking about this is, instead of having to make the choices that you don't want to pursue wrong or evil, or project that shadow onto some other thing, person, group, own it and say, this is what I want to pursue. This is what I would love to bring to full fruition, because Gemini is the exploratory phase. Cancer is the phase where we're taking one of those directions and nurturing it behind the scenes and allowing it to grow to its fullest expression, rather than just half measures, rather than just surface area. There's depth that comes through that transition to Cancer. So instead of having to make everyone or anything around you wrong because you can't do all of it, just decide what you really love. Decide what truly speaks to your heart. What brings passion to you, right? Because we'll see that when we transition to Cancers, it talks about what we're really attracted to, what we really love, what is really worth bringing into full form, okay? And it's so much easier to work from that position of deciding what we love, rather than always like tearing down anything that just either isn't right for us in that moment, or maybe just different than us, or something like that. It doesn't have to be black or white. There are some paths that aren't right for us that may be right for somebody else, and that's okay. Do you see what I'm saying? This is the shift in thinking when it comes to Gemini 3, in my opinion. Okay, so let's take a look at the chart as to what could be unfolding around this period of time. So here we have the June 10th date, and we're going to go forward to this 12th. We kind of touched on this a little bit already when Uranus was emerging from the beams. But this is the point where Uranus is at the bending of the nodes. And this is a technique or a circumstance, a transit, where we see Uranus squaring exactly the north and the south node of the moon. Now, the moon is associated with bringing light from the planetary spheres into the earthly sphere, right? Into the earthly level energy. This is how the ancients viewed the planetary energies. They would come down through different levels, and then the moon would help distribute it around in the physical existence or manifested in the physical existence. So when we have the nodes of the moon, we have a point of increase with the north node at this point in Pisces. And then the south node is a point of decrease in the sign of Virgo. So we're at the point, the north bending, we are at the peak of increase. We had a Uranus north node conjunction. I don't know. It was a number of years ago. I wonder exactly how many years ago it was. I don't know if I have time to go through all of it here. Now I'm actually genuinely curious. Let's see where it was, because it might be the seed that was planted for what is coming to a peak right now. So let's go through it real quickly here. Let's see if we can get Uranus and the north node together. Let's see. I think I blew past it. There it is. No, that's the south node. Interesting. Okay. This might take too long. It's probably in Taurus somewhere, wasn't it? Right? It's got to be in Taurus somewhere. I know this is riveting. There we go. So we had a Taurus. We had a Taurus conjunction at what? I don't know. How many degrees? If anybody's out there like doing this, clicking it around. This is going to take me too long, but I think it might have been in Taurus. So think about where Uranus conjoined the north node and try to connect that to the energy that we're feeling coming to a peak right now. This is somewhat of a exercise I probably should have done off broadcast. I'm going to get back to where we were at here. Okay. But this is a turning point. So whatever was started is coming to its peak around this period of time, right? So this is June 12th, 2026. There we go. So we are getting to the point where we're at a turning point. We have an increase, and then we are moving now towards decrease. Maybe it's something where we start to get, we start to learn about the hubris, right? We start to learn about the consequences for pursuing some kind of Promethean type of fire stealing. And in this case, we're trying to, let me just think about this for a minute, because there's just something I think, profound trying to come through me. I can feel it. I'm just getting the right words for it. Just like Frankenstein's monster was trying to create life from death, artificial intelligence is trying to create intelligence from something that is not necessarily intelligent, right? Or is not conscious. It's trying to create consciousness from void. And it is disconnected from ethics, right? Like, and I know people are like, oh, we're trying to train it to be ethical and things like that. I'm like, well, I just don't know if there is an ability to replace the type of thinking that human beings can do as far as evaluating the consequences of their actions ethically. At least not yet. Maybe that will happen. Maybe there will be something where the the AI or the intelligence has the ability to reason in ways that are ethical or consider the consequences of its actions and things of that nature, that raises all sorts of other questions about whose ethics got programmed into it. Is it the ethics of the tech billionaires whose mostly sole purpose is to keep you using the service so that they can profit? That's the question that I have. All right. If I trusted the tech billionaires, and if I trusted that they had the best interest of humanity in mind, I would be much less skeptical of this technology than I am right now. Because anybody who seeks to consolidate resources, power, etc., I'm skeptical of. And this to me is an attempt to do so. And they've verbalized it. They've said the quiet part out loud. We want to make your intelligence a commodity. we want to charge you rent to be able to think. And that to me is like so disgusting that I'm going to keep talking and shouting about this from the rooftop. So long story short, this might be the moment where we're moving towards increase, where that hubris of trying to create an intelligence that really the divine has created, the Tao has created. I guess you could also get super philosophical about it and be like, well, isn't the Tao or the divine creating this artificial intelligence as well? Maybe. Who knows? But I do know that hubris is something that is a danger when it comes to these types of experiments. So let's keep going. I've spent enough time on the Uranus for now. I would love to hear your thoughts, though. I think that we're trying to have these conversations in real time because we're all in the middle of it. These are things that are going to affect everybody. They're going to affect our rural communities. They're going to affect our city communities. They're going to affect people domestically in North America. They're going to affect people internationally in other countries. We all share this planet. We all need certain things to stay healthy and to stay alive, like fresh water and a stable environment that isn't getting way too hot or way too cold or way too windy or way too stormy, or flooded, etc. And we all need to maintain the ability to think for ourselves. If we homogenize our thinking, which I think is a lot of the goal of some of these autocratic, technocratic, fascist movements. They want homogeny of thinking, homogeneous thinking. And that's just not how humanity has thrived. We thrive through diversity. We thrive through the ability to see things from multiple perspectives and to have people play very, very different roles, not just the same role or look the same or act the same. It's not how we've survived for thousands of years. And to me, that is a death wish. That is hastening the extinction of the species. And I'm a lover of life. I'm a lover of not just humanity, but all of the other species on this planet. And to be able to defend that life force, I think we need to kind of ask these really important questions. All right, so we get to the 12th also. Mercury is entering its retrograde shadow. So it's very fascinating to me when we have multiple movements of planets on the same day, because the actions are interconnected. They're weaved together in the fate. So the Mercury entering into its retrograde shadow, whatever is revealed with Uranus at the bending of the nodes, Mercury is going to review up to this point, right? It's going to say, this is the moment that we're going to come back to revisit, right? So it might not be the end of the story, I guess is what I'm saying, when Uranus is going in the bending of the nodes. Venus moves into Leo on the 13th. Okay, so this is a point where Venus is moving out of Cancer into the first 10-degree section of Leo and beginning its opposition to Pluto. Okay, so this is the 13th by whole sign, I guess you could say. It's not within 3 degrees yet, but it will be in the coming days. We'll talk about the Venus-Pluto opposition on the 17th. So it's going to be building pretty significantly over the 4 days between the 13th and the 17th. Venus generally shows us something that we are either attracted to, ways that we will create harmony with others. It brings things together that have been separated, according to Robert Schmidt of Project Hindsight. When a planet moves through Leo 1, Leo 1, I'm just going to show you this deck and flash card real quick. Here is the Five of Wands, and you see people struggling to try to bring together. It's a mock battle. It's a competition. The Lord of Strife, they call it. Austin Kaba calls it the spotlight. There's two things with this, I think, that stand out. The first is it is a Saturn-ruled decan in a Sun-ruled sign. Those two planets are at odds with one another in the Thema Mundi. The Sun is all about visibility. Saturn oftentimes likes to cast things into darkness. So the pressure to perform, the pressure to become visible, the pain of visibility can be part of this as well. It's not always fun being visible. It's fun sometimes if people are being nice to you or being supportive. Visibility can also take on a scary thing if people are being critical or people are being mean. So there could be something where we're really struggling with our desire to be visible, or even the need to be visible. Okay, like when we're feeling pressured to make a new start, to embrace independence, sometimes we have to share our gifts with others. We have to share our authenticity with others, and that can be scary. This decan is often associated with mask making, with like trying on new personas. We may be starting to feel like, oh, we've got to try something new. Maybe it's not what the category that other people put us in. And that can also be a little bit scary, is trying to live up to others' expectations. To me, the goal of Leo is integrity. And integrity happens by a unification between who you are and what you feel and what you believe on the inside, and the expression that takes externally. How can you become unified in that? And this might be the beginning of that journey. I would say that the journey towards authenticity is under threat right now, because a lot of us, myself included, are not in alignment with the overarching political direction, the overarching economic direction of the people in power right now. And that is very uncomfortable, because there are lots of things going on in our collective that are making it very difficult for people just to be themselves or be allowed to be themselves. We've got people that are just under threat of just annihilation right now. Like the tenets of a fascist regime is they want to make certain people disappear. And that's scary, right? And I think that everybody should be allowed to just be themselves, as long as you're not hurting other people. And in this case, the destruction of other people's individuality is hurtful. I mean, it's always hurtful, right? Or the allowing of the desires of certain individuals is the destruction of others. And that to me is a part of the real essence of the oppositions between Venus and Pluto, and then eventually Jupiter and Pluto. This one is oftentimes Venus is associated with feminine principles. This could be, there could be something where laws or things like that, where it's associated with feminine health or care, or the ability to be feminine is coming up against that negative, corrupt force that has been repressed, that toxic masculinity, that like homogenization force that we're seeing with Pluto and Aquarius. That could be part of it. When Jupiter moves into Leo, there are different significations that will come with that. We'll get to that in a moment. But I think that the tension of your individuality and your individual desires, and both the pressure to conform, the threat to conform, and the need to take actions in service of the greater good to defend people's individuality is going to be important. I think that if you are in a circumstance where you are maybe not in the crosshairs of a fascist regime right now, it's 1,000 times more important for you to utilize that privilege to speak out and to defend those that are weaker or those that are being targeted. It's not that they're weak, it's just that they're being targeted. I think it's really important. And I think that this is an opportunity to utilize a spotlight to speak to the rights of every individual, not just of a specific few individuals. And I think that there will be tension around that. It's not easy to do. Nobody wants to be the nail that sticks out ready to get the hammer. This is really one of the difficult things we're going through as a community right now. Is it safe to speak out? I saw something, a clip on Instagram today, where a woman in Texas was arrested for posting and speaking truth to power about the toxic sludge coming out of her faucet. Like the water supply of this small town in Texas was being polluted, and she made a post about it, and they came and arrested her. They arrested her for speaking out about brown water coming out of her tap. That's where we're at in America right now. Do you see what I'm saying? That the visibility that she was trying to call truth to power, they arrested her. Like, that's something that I have not experienced yet in this country as far as witnessing. We've heard about it in the history books through regimes that want to censor and want to control and want to repress dissent. This is new territory in my lifetime, and it is kind of scary. So I think that this is an important moment to figure out, how do we balance out our need to stand out and speak truth to power, and to maybe figure out the right strategies to do it in a way that can achieve the goal that we are trying to achieve. And I don't mean that to just say, well, how do we maintain our safety? I want you to maintain your safety, but more so I want to be able to achieve the goal. And sometimes it's hard to achieve the goal if you're being repressed. So I don't have a great answer to this, to be honest with you. I do think it's important to stand and have courage, especially to not acquiesce to intimidation. I think that's really important because one of the significations of Aquarius and Saturn in Aquarius, according to Joy Usher, is a glass ceiling type of mentality, where the way that she describes Aquarius and Saturn is defeating the possibility of doing something before, just by demoralizing people, thinking that it's not even possible. Do you see what I'm saying? And if we acquiesce to abuses of power before we even attempt to do the things we want to do, they've already won. So it's like, what are we doing here? Do you see what I'm saying? So that to me is it's important to still speak truth to power. It's still important to speak out in service of the more vulnerable people in your community. And there might be times where you have to have an enormous amount of courage to do so. I do think that we're stronger in numbers. So building community is really important. And I think that to be able to restore, hopefully, some equality, balance, and fairness, it will be necessary to do some things that are outside of our comfort zone as a community, as a global community, not just as an American community, not just as certain factions of society. We will have to get more comfortable with discomfort, I guess you could say. We will have to be able to accept reducing some of our attachment to convenience, some of our attachment to the way that we've always done things. Because remember, we've talked about earlier in the broadcast, trying to meet a new problem with the solutions that maybe worked or even didn't work in the past, that's going to make the problem worse. We have to meet the issues that we're dealing with the right solutions in the moment. And I got to tell you, friends, this mother, this lover, this earth is in pain right now. And it has been pushed to its very brink through abuse. And the solutions for getting people enough food, getting people enough water, getting people the shelter that everybody deserves, will take innovative solutions that aren't based on profiteering and extraction. So those are the types of questions that could come up that we have to face with Pluto and Aquarius, and with, you know, the need to put ourselves out there in the world. I've really tried to balance this axis in my life significantly. I have the nodes here. So the tension between visibility, my own desires, and the need to become and assert my own will, and the needs of the collective, there's always been this kind of thing. I will say this: as uncomfortable as I was with visibility as a young person, and even into my performance years as a musician, the one thing that has helped me feel more comfortable being visible and speaking out is utilizing my spotlight to speak truth to collective issues, not for self-promotion necessarily, but to be able to serve my community. I am much more comfortable being visible, talking about these astrological things that have a greater collective impact, than I was saying, hey, come to my show or whatever. Not to say that as artists or musicians we can't self-promote. I'm just saying, from a personal perspective, balancing that axis for me was, I'm willing to utilize my voice, my spotlight, and my platform for what I hope are more collective goals. And that might be a way to navigate this opposition as well. All right, so that is Venus moving into Leo. Now we have a new moon in Gemini. Okay, so here's the new moon in Gemini 3. Let's go to the new moon exactly. I'm going to do a whole broadcast on this. This is June 14th. And not only do we have a new moon on this day, but Mercury will be back in bounds on this day. So those outside the box thoughts, journeys, communications, maybe they will start to come back into a more normal type of experience, I guess you could say, for better or for worse. This new moon is hosted by Mercury, and Mercury is in Cancer still. I'm just looking over some of my notes. We've got Uranus at the bending of the nodes. Moon will be out of bounds for this new moon. Mercury will be back in bounds. The host Mercury will be in that malefic enclosure. So this is one where we are trying to make a choice. We're trying to figure out what direction sings to our heart and which direction just can't be manifested at this moment. But the decision-making process might be a little bit foggy, with Neptune squaring Mercury, with Mercury in malefic enclosure, with Mercury in aversion to the new moon, in a blind spot to it. So we might not be able to get the clarity we need to make the choice that we want to make yet. That doesn't mean we can't gather information. That doesn't mean we can't use our intuition to feel our way through the dark. But I think expecting us to have the ability to make a choice in clarity, it might be a lot to ask at this point, okay? The other thing that is happening is Mars is moving through the third decan of Taurus. That decan can... we talked about hubris earlier. This decan is about humility in the face of nature, that there could be forces outside of our control that might not be allowing us the clarity. There might be things that have fallen into disrepair that are higher priorities than the choices that we think we want to pursue. Like, this is like, maybe you want to do something real bad with, God, I don't want to speak this into existence or anything, but let's say you have a gardening project that you want to do, and it takes a certain amount of resources, but you have some other part of your home that needs to be repaired, and you have to switch gears. You don't necessarily want to make that choice, but you're having to make it by necessity. So that there could be something like that in your life, where there's something that you would like, the choice you'd like to make, but then there might be another choice that is putting a lot of pressure, where it might not be the sexiest thing. It might not be the thing you want to do, but it might be something that you have to go back and repair potentially. So Mercury's back in bounds. On the 15th through the 16th, we have Venus sextiling Uranus and then trining Neptune. So that the Venus is going to get a little bit of support potentially from Neptune, I guess. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, as it makes its opposition to Pluto. So this is a really Venus heavy part of the transits for the month. So we've got the contact with Uranus. So Venus sextiling Uranus, new ideas coming about how to create visibility, maybe new opportunities to be visible and the pressure that that brings. Venus trining Neptune in Aries, maybe there's an ability to utilize our glamour to put ourselves into a new risk-taking proposition. Maybe we can figure out ways to present ourselves and adorn ourselves differently to get where we want to go. But then ultimately that is leading to that opposition to Pluto, that discomfort with visibility that I think we've spent enough time kind of breaking down. So that's our Venus sextile Uranus trine Neptune and then opposite Pluto between the 15th and the 17th. And that's really the end of Gemini season. So we get to Cancer 1 here, the solstice. Okay, so here's the solstice energy. All of those Venusian experiences could lead to a change of mind. Maybe we're so uncomfortable with the visibility that we're like, we got to try something else. You know what I mean? We got to switch directions a little bit. Oftentimes when we get to Cancer, we're switching directions. We are, because of that declination change. So let's bring that to the screen. Let me take the opportunity. Every decan, we should take a stretch. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We got one more 10-day section with a few more aspects, nothing too crazy. And then we'll do an I-Ching and we'll do an animal. And then we'll wrap for the day and start to hopefully embrace and enjoy our weekends. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's a pleasure to be of service to you and to connect with you and your wisdom. And feel free to reach out if you need help. If you need I've been connecting with some really nice folks, some nice clients recently. I really just enjoy getting to know people and to kind of see what's going on in their life and to utilize these messages to help in practical ways too. Sometimes practical means just understanding our journey and having a different perspective so that we're not swimming upstream. I'll tell you how much stress that can alleviate. Sometimes just realizing that the direction we're heading is not the right direction can be the greatest gift of astrology ever, where we say, you know what, that's actually not what we want. We've been working on old programming, right? Oftentimes we were working on someone else's programming. And when we look at the chart and we really get into depth with it, we can start to understand what we really want and what we really want to pursue. So important with some of the Aries stuff is really knowing who you are, knowing what would truly make you happy rather than trying to conform to someone else's expectations, whether it's a parent or a family or societies, right? And with the way that the social climate is right now, conforming to a corrupt system is that really what we want to do? I know sometimes we don't have a choice, but there's always some choice, right? We're always making choices all the time. Sun in Cancer 1. Let's bring to the screen the Cancer Decan flashcard. All right, Sun in Cancer 1, Moon sign. So the Moon is the host of Cancer. This face is a Venus-ruled face. So you can see in the Two of Cups, two figures coming together, exchanging resources, mutually beneficial relationships, nurturing relationships. Book T and Book of Thoth call it the Lord of Love. So it's like, what do you love? It's a nice decan. There's some nice energy in it. Any decanic energy can be corrupted. So like sometimes when the two malefics are moving through this decan, it can be really, really disruptive because it is such a pleasant energy. If we're separated from that pleasant energy, it can be really hard. If you have Mars in this decan, the love of a partner or the love of a mother could be denied to you, and that can be really painful. And there's ways to work through creating that for yourself in your life. If Saturn is there, sometimes it's a separation from that, from a partner, or from a cherished parental figure or nurturing figure. So there can be negativity to it, but in general, it is one of the more pleasant decans in the zodiac. And it's realizing what we want to grow, what we want to nurture, what we're really attracted to. You know, those are the questions to ask yourself with this. What do we want to infuse into a body? This is the spirit Nike is the charioteer, right? So Nike was driving the chariot. And in the tarot, we think of the chariot. The chariot is a Cancer card in the major arcana. We've got our bodies are our chariots. So what do we want to infuse into a body? Which of those Gemini ideas do we want to manifest? Do we want to make real? Which ones are we able to make real? Which ones are appropriate to make real? And which ones do we just can't pursue in this moment? Those are all questions that we can answer in the transition from Gemini to Cancer. At the very beginning of the solstice, we have a first quarter moon. Okay, so if we go here to the first quarter moon, let's see what we got here. All right, so here we have the square between the sun and the moon at 0 degrees of Cancer and Libra. Okay, so we start the summer solstice with tension, right? With tension, and there's also an elephant in the room here, and that elephant is Mars on Algol. Okay, let's think about that for a second. Mars on Algol. Here's how I like to craft. I'm a storyteller. I like to craft possible narratives. Now, when I'm doing my narrative exercises, it's not the only possibility. It is one possibility in a wave of possibilities, right? So, sun moving into Cancer, putting a spotlight on our one-on-one relationships, on the way that on what we want to bring into fruition, and the tension of bringing it into fruition because of someone else's needs or desires, because of an inequality, all right? Sometimes we have to understand someone else's perspective in a relationship before we can create harmony with them, right? If the goal of Cancer 1 is to create harmonious, beneficial, mutually beneficial relationships, if we don't understand what the other person wants or needs, it might be difficult to do so. So remember we talked about the moon increasing our awareness of the quality of the decan at a waxing moon, which the first quarter moon is. We want to increase our awareness of an imbalance so that we can start the process of rebalancing in our personal relationships. So you might become aware of the desires of your partner that you weren't aware of. You might become aware of an injustice or an imbalance. And here's the thing, friends. We talk about these in mythic terms, literally mythic language. It's not always a huge deal. It could just be like you're having a little bit of tension with a partner. You're not seeing eye to eye with somebody, and you have to understand that that's the planetary energy trying to work through you. Sometimes it can be very mundane. So don't get too scared about it. I will say this though, there's certain points in the chart that I peek my eyes up a little bit sometimes. When Mars is on Algol, that is something that you would want to pay attention to. So normally, the tension between the sun and the moon in Libra would maybe be a passing, I would hesitate to even say argument, but disagreement, like awareness of someone else's perspective. In this case, Mars is on a fixed star that is associated with powerful feminine energy, rage, with trying to fix something, but also potentially losing control of ourselves because of the awareness of the injustice, because of the raw feminine power that comes through that fixed star. it's a force of nature, right? So I would say if you do come into tension with a partner or with a family member or with anyone that you're trying to create harmony with, and you see that their perspective is much different than yours, be careful not to lose your head. Like the Algol like kind of energy is related to the Medusa story. You may be able to use that energy if you recognize an injustice in the world. You might be able to use that energy for strong protection, for speaking out or for taking action to restore harmony, justice, and balance. But it's important to maintain your center, to not lose control of yourself, because this Mars can be very violent on this fixed star. So you want to avoid situations where the back and forth between you and the other gets out of control. Okay, so know when to say when. Know when to say, time out. We don't see eye to eye on this. Things are getting heated. Let's take a break. Let's go outside. Let's touch some grass. Let's get something to eat. Those are important things. Like there's a concept in Japan, I don't forget the name of it, but it's a concept where a lot of times their relationships will last a lot longer than in Western civilization because they know when to take a time out from an argument. They know that it's like, oh, we've come to an impasse. Now it's time to just have a little bit of space. And that might be good advice for this particular quarter moon in the ingress in the summer solstice. Sun trines the north node on the 23rd. Okay, so here's the sun trining the north node in Pisces. I think that as much as we might feel tension in the turning points of the bending of the nodes, of the planets squaring the nodes, we might actually start to feel a little bit of a flow state when the planets are trining the nodes. So this might be something where we're feeling the ability to find higher meaning and purpose. Maybe the conversations that we had, maybe they were intense, but maybe they were really enlightening. Maybe they were something that helped us find greater purpose and meaning within our relationships because now we have a new perspective with our partners or with the people that we're trying to work with. So that trine between the sun and the north node maybe could help us have a new identity within our relationship now that we have a better understanding of what each partner needs. Venus trines Saturn the same day that the sun squares Neptune on the 25th. So here is the Venus trine to Saturn, 14 degrees Leo, 14 degrees. Okay, it's the exact trine is at 13 Leo and 13 Aries. The square between the sun and Neptune, 4 degrees Cancer, 4 degrees of Aries. So those two aspects are happening simultaneously. Saturn is in the overcoming trine to Venus. So oftentimes the planet in the overcoming position will sort of have power over that planet. Neptune's in the overcoming square to the sun. To me, that is speaks towards the desire to make the new start. The pressure to individuate is a little bit stronger than the Venusian desire to be rewarded for authenticity, things of that nature, to have support and applause. Maybe this is something where if we take the actions to be true to ourselves, we will be rewarded for that potentially. I don't know. I think that the overcoming square of Neptune to the sun in Cancer, sometimes the illusion of individuality can be really strong, and it can put a lot of pressure on our relationships and on our sensitivity. So I guess I would be careful not to get so caught up in the fire of your own passion, the fire of your own individuality, the fire of your own yang, that you smother the sensitivity that you have for others, or smother the ability to be a little more quiet, to be a little bit more sensitive, to be a little bit more nurturing. I think that it's okay to have a balance between our masculine and our feminine sides. Like I think that a lot of us in society are grappling with toxic masculinity right now. Toxic masculinity has brought the planet to the brink of extinction. And that's a problem. And we need to start finding the right balance between that. On the 28th, okay, we're getting towards the end of the month here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I think we're kind of flying through these aspects, but appreciate you being here with me today. Mars is going to sextile Jupiter on the 28th, and then from Taurus to Cancer, and then immediately move into Gemini. And that ends our malefic enclosure of Mercury and Venus, because now Mars isn't going to be casting that ray anymore to Venus, right? On the side of it that encloses it. Okay. So to me, the sextile is like finding a solution through grace, through kind of almost like divine intervention on some level, like to fix a problem that we've been vexed by. If we're able to maintain our cool and maintain our centeredness, and then finding a new possibility once Mars moves into Gemini that gets us out of the rutted experience, right? It says, you know what? Maybe we didn't have to do this the way that we thought. Maybe here's a million other possibilities of a way you could solve this problem when Mars moves into Gemini. And it may be a shock to your system and everyone else's too, with the conjunction with Uranus. So that is starting to build towards the Mars-Uranus conjunction that's on July the 4th. So that is something that a lot of astrologers have had their eye on, especially because it's such a poignant moment in history, the 250th anniversary of the birth of the United States. I'm a little nervous about it, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what that means. I know that, let's just take a moment. I know that there is a cage match scheduled on the White House lawn, I think. Am I remembering this correctly? My voice is raising because I'm just like, is this reality that we're living in? Like, so some kind of weird violence around that period of time that is state sanctioned. I don't know. I mean, I guess I hope that's all it is. And it's just ridiculous and weird and not something worse. But I guess just keep your head in a swivel when the Mars-Uranus is coming together on July 4th. Be real careful if you're working with fireworks. Also, this is practical advice, I guess. When you got Mars and Uranus come together, accidents are it's a lot easier for accidents to happen. So be smart about your celebrations if you're doing that. I'm not really a firework person. I have an aversion to noise, and it's really disruptive to the animals in the neighborhood. And so I'm not a huge fan of that. But if that's your thing, practice some extra caution around this period of time so you don't blow your fingers off. I've witnessed my next door neighbor, bless his innocent heart, hold a firework in his hand and just like almost completely blow his hand off. I wouldn't recommend it, but I digress. After this, the end of the Mercury-Venus malefic enclosure with Mars moving into Gemini, Mercury will station retrograde. So this is the 29th, where Mercury is going to, you can see it, it's in red here. It's going to station retrograde. Mercury was heading towards a conjunction with Jupiter. It will retrograde before it completes that. That is, in traditional astrology, is called a reformation. So there might be something that we're asking a lot of questions about how to deal with excess or scarcity, and we're getting ready for the solution, but then we have to reconsider something. So you might be, to me, this is like you're getting ready to spend some money on something expensive is one potential thing. But then you're like, well, maybe we need to reconsider this. Mars just moved into Uranus. Maybe there's something else that it needs to become a priority, and reevaluating that. Maybe you're like, well, maybe these resources shouldn't be in service of just a selfish desire. Maybe I need to utilize these resources to help someone in my community. Those are all the types of questions that could be asked with the retrograde of Mercury as it makes its reformation. It's a reversal before it completes that aspect to Jupiter. That brings us to the last two things in the month, which we have the full moon in Capricorn 1 on the 29th, the same day that Mercury is stationing retrograde. And Mars will be at the bending of the nodes the next day into the 30th. So that transition point with Mars moving away from increase towards a period of decrease is going to affect the topic of Scorpio and Aries in your chart, but also through the language of Gemini. And then the full moon in Capricorn, let's just look at that in context of all this and spend a little bit of time with that. So here is the full moon, 8 degrees of Capricorn. that is interesting because it is conjoining a fixed star called Phasces. All right. So Phasces is a fixed star in the constellation of Sagittarius, which is the Archer. Now you're like, well, wait a minute, it's in Capricorn. Well, there is a phenomenon called precession where the constellations and the tropical zodiac start, like, they separate a little bit each year because of the wobble and the tilt of the Earth. So the overlay of the constellation of Sagittarius actually overlaps into the Capricorn tropical sign. So by projected ecliptical degree, the Capricorn 8 degrees is now in the eye of the Archer. So this colors that area of the zodiac. It gives a little bit of a ruthless aim. If you combine that with the Capricorn ambition, there could be a ruthless ambition that we're trying to achieve that could be putting pressure on our ability to create harmony within our personal relationships. And all of that is going to be squaring Saturn and Neptune. So we might be just feeling pressure to do it. This ruthless ambition. So I would caution you towards softening some of that potentially, or at least figuring out what is worth pursuing. And the question I always ask with Capricorn versus Cancer, and this is coming from a very Cancerian perspective because I'm Cancer Sun and Mercury, but I always ask my Capricorn folks, is it worth getting up to the top of the mountain if you have to step on everyone else to get there and get there alone? How are you going to get back down the other side by yourself, right? I think those are questions that I like to ask at this full moon is your ambition worth stepping on the heads of others? For me, the answer has overwhelmingly been no, even to the point of really having to soften some of my youthful ambitions. Sometimes it just wasn't worth it to me. I'd rather climb the smaller hill with my relationships intact than the big one and find myself alone at the top of it. And I know that not everyone will agree with that, but I think that's an important kind of question to ask at that period of time. Yeah, Javier says no, it's lonely. Actually, right, it's really lonely, and you might be in danger, because I think a lot of times we take for granted the support that we have when we're getting to the top of that mountain. I always think of like people who have achieved greatness in this world. Forgive me for using this as a metaphor, but he's in the zeitgeist. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was an extremely talented, hardworking person, but he might not have reached the heights of his success without a guy like Quincy Jones, who was helping to support him through arranging his albums and helping him make choices in the studio and things like that. He wouldn't have gotten where he was without Bruce Swindeen, who was an excellent genius engineer that helped engineer things like Thriller. He wouldn't have gotten where he would have gotten without Rod Temperton, who was one of the songwriters that was responsible for writing things like Thriller. So much support along the way went into the entity that became Michael Jackson, right? He might probably not have been who he became without Joe Jackson either, who kind of abused him into a ridiculous work ethic. That doesn't mean that we're supporting that action. It just means that he didn't get there alone, right? He got there through trauma, but he also got there through support. Realizing that we don't ascend to the heights of those mountain peaks alone is a really important Capricorn realization. Being able to be a little bit tougher is a Cancer realization. Sometimes we Cancerians need to be a little bit less sensitive and peek our heads out of the shell every once in a while and do something hard and difficult. Sometimes the Capricorns need to soften a little bit. That's the balance we're trying to work through at this full moon in Capricorn. Now, keep this in mind. The sun is in Cancer. The ambition, okay, the conscious achievement that is trying to be made during that solar period is one of unifying and harmonizing a sensitive personal relationship, finding passion. The vehicle that sun is going to be pouring its light into for manifestation is one of exile, is one where the terrain and conditions aren't as fertile as we would want. Think of the fertility of Taurus season. When we're in Capricorn season in the northern hemisphere, there's death on the face of the earth. There's hibernation. It's more difficult to find food. It's more difficult. It's not the right time to plant the seeds, right? So this is a time where we are wanting so hard to create a sensitive, harmonious relationship, but the circumstances might be more harsh. They might require toughness that we wouldn't necessarily expect around how to make this and manifest this. We'll do a whole live stream week on that as well. So we talked about Mars at the bending of the nodes. Last thing, at the end of the month, Jupiter moves into Leo right after this full moon. So here is Jupiter in Leo. Jupiter in Leo, it's just starting that opposition, right, that we kind of broke down with Venus. I think the difference between Jupiter and Venus, there's a lot, but the main things is that Venus is a planet that receives good fortune. Jupiter often is a planet that creates it. So if you think about opening yourself up to visibility with Jupiter opposite Pluto and receiving visibility that you might not have pursued consciously, Jupiter is creating good fortune through the conscious exploration, creating order through the actions that we take that can bring honor and merit into our life. So you might be tempted when Jupiter moves into Leo to take actions that could bring more visibility. But that may be running into the corruption of Pluto in Aquarius, the dangers of that visibility. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It just means that there might be some tension between the actions that you want to take towards becoming more visible, becoming more authentic, and the circumstances that we're experiencing out in the world. So we are going to have a Jupiter Cazimi that happens in July and into August. So there is going to be a renewal of Jupiter in the heart of the sun. And the only challenging part about this really to me is two things. One, we lose the exaltation dignity of Jupiter in Cancer. I think that placement has been doing a lot of heavy lifting with all of the difficult placements that we've been having with Saturn and Aries and some of these Mars transits. Jupiter in Cancer has been really doing a lot of heavy lifting. When we lose that dignity, that could be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging, especially with the opposition to Pluto. Jupiter's also moving into a Saturn-ruled decan. There's just we're bound to do these things, these actions. It's almost like we don't have a choice. I would take a look at the Sagittarius and Pisces area of your chart and see where energy might be shifting, where you might need some more visibility around that. I would say also hang in there, because Jupiter will return to its own face in Leo 2. So if we play this out for a few weeks or months, Jupiter is going to regain some dignity that it has lost moving from Cancer to Leo. And it might be a lot easier to be recognized for the work that we're doing and to be able to achieve some of the goals that we're setting. Okay, that's what I've got for you for the transits of June. Just a little preview of July before we move forward. We got a new moon in Cancer in July, Cancer 3. We've got a full moon in the first 10-degree section of Aquarius, conjoining Pluto. We'll see how that turns out. Venus is going to move into its fall in Virgo in July. Sun moves into Leo. Mercury stations direct in Cancer 2, 16 degrees of Cancer. The nodes shift from Aquarius and Leo. So we have the North Node moving from Pisces to Aquarius. They move backwards oftentimes. And then we have the South Node moving from Virgo to Leo. So an increase in our awareness of community, but also maybe an increase in the attempts to homogenize and to repress individuality. That could be increasing with the North Node in Aquarius. We'll talk about this in the Astrology of July. a decrease in our willpower, maybe a decrease in our visibility, a decrease in our attachment, maybe, to individual goals. When we are faced with global crisis, sometimes we have to sublimate temporarily our individual desires for the good of the collective. And this might be something that we are having to be faced with the transition of the nodes. Neptune and Saturn are going to be stationing retrograde in July. Keep an eye on that Saturn retrograde, because I've been talking about a theory about a retrograde Saturn potentially acting exalted, so we'll talk about that. Mars will also conjoin Uranus on July 4th, so that's another big aspect that astrologers have been talking about. But we'll cover it all when we get to it, but just to give you a little preview. Okay, so Javier says, my nodal return this year is so weird. It's a lot going on, Javier. I'm going to have a nodal opposition. We'll see how that goes. I also have an eclipse, like exactly on my ascendant in August. I'm not really looking forward to that, to be honest with you, but we'll see. Let's do an I-Ching and let's do an animal. What do you say? Start with an I-Ching. The hexagram that we have for June is hexagram number 13, fellowship, right? Working together with others. And it is changing to hexagram 22, which translates to adornment or beauty. So I'm going to read to you from Jack Balkin's book, The Laws of Change, and give you a little insight to this. There's two changing lines, so we'll talk about those two, and then we'll do an animal. We have a mythological animal for this month. So hexagram 13 translates to fellowship with people, joining with others, community, keeping the group together. The judgment in this hexagram says fellowship with people, even in the open fields, success. It is beneficial to cross the great river. It is beneficial for the superior person to persevere. Jack says the best way to realize your goals now is through participation in a group. You can achieve great influence and success through a collective endeavor. The group may be your friends, or it may be a political group, a social group, a religious organization, or the people you work with every day. If you are willing to join in with like-minded people, you can accomplish much more than you could ever on your own. For a group to succeed, people need to feel that they have a common purpose and that the members are committed to each other. Trust and reciprocity are essential ingredients to success. The text speaks of fellowship even in the open fields. Fields are a metaphor for what is far and wide, broad and distant. Thus, fellowship even in the open fields means fellowship that is maintained through thick and thin, and that can extend to all sorts of people who possess common values and goals. A sense of commitment and shared devotion make it possible for a group to achieve important and ambitious tasks, symbolized by being able to cross a great river. If you find a group with whom you can identify and whose values you admire, give your support without reservation. If others see that you are earnest and sincere, they will be willing to join in as well. So there's two changing lines. Fourth place, changing line says, he climbs onto the city wall, but he cannot attack. Good fortune. Selfishness and misunderstanding have isolated you. We talked about that with the pursuit of a Capricorn goal, potentially. Feelings of distrust have impaired your relations with other people. You see yourself in confrontation with others and begin to feel defensive. Hence, the text says he climbs onto the city wall. If you try to go your own way, you will become increasingly lonely and disconnected. Oh, that's funny. We just talked about that, didn't we? This may also be a problem with the Saturn hosting the moon in Capricorn, trying to do things by yourself, right? It's kind of an illusion. That's the illusion that we're seeing with Neptune in Aries. Okay, if you try to go in your own way, you're going to be lonely and disconnected. You'll soon discover it's much more difficult to go alone than you anticipated. Luckily, these feelings of alienation and emptiness will bring you to your senses, helping you recognize the true costs of a break in your relations and the price you would pay for open warfare. Hence, the text says he cannot attack. Once you realize that you and the other party need each other and that fighting will get you nowhere, tensions will start to ease. And as you come to see the situations more realistically, you'll be able to begin the process of making the necessary compromises and reestablishing trust, which will ultimately lead to good fortune. I kind of see this almost, you can see this through a political lens too. The illusion of almost the separation of political parties. Like in America, we have this dumb two-party system, Democrats, Republicans, etc. When really the true issue that we're experiencing is a class issue, right? It is the haves and the have-nots. And if people would realize that and band together against the oligarchs, we would realize that we're stronger as a community, and people would get a lot more of what they want. And that doesn't mean that there isn't differences, and there isn't things that they're just irreconcilable. But I do think that people are starting to understand the abuses of the elite class. And it's not necessarily divided over party lines. It's divided over wealth inequality lines. This brings us to the next hexagram line. It says, people in fellowship at first cry out and weep, but afterward they laugh. After a great struggle, they manage to find each other. You find yourself continually separated from people you want to be with or a group that you belong to. Difficulties, obstacles, and misunderstandings keep you apart, and this causes you great unhappiness. Do not despair. The text advises that you express your feelings and your desires for union publicly. Make your sense of commitment clear. You will find that other people feel the same way. The ties between you are strong, and if you remain devoted to each other, ultimately nothing will keep you apart. Working together, you can conquer the problems that divide you, and your sadness will turn to joy. I love that. Find the things that bring you together with other people. Find your commonalities. Don't give in to the illusions of fear that try to separate us from one another. Find the things that you connect with. The I-Ching gives us a way to do that. It's through adornment. It's through grace. It's through beauty, persuasion, ornamentation, simplicity, inner beauty. This hexagram is the converse of hexagram number 21, which translates to biting through. Biting through demands that we ignore surfaces and get down to essentials. Biting through, this hexagram, hexagram 22, recognizes that adornment and grace are also necessary to life. Civilization cannot survive without persuasion and civility. Manners ease tensions, diffuse conflict, and make social life smoother and more bearable. Beauty and style rescue everyday life from drabness and despair. The message of this hexagram is that we must recognize the limited but important role that grace and adornment play in society and in personal well-being. Before I go on to the final part of this, this feels very Gemini. Oftentimes what Gemini will do is it will shift the message in a way that will be able to be received by the person that you are communicating with. Now, some people call this dishonest, and then oftentimes if it's abused, it is dishonest. But when it's not abused, it can be figuring out how to soften the delivery of the essential truth so that you can find common ground with the other person. I do this every day in my work with Venus and Gemini. I'm constantly trying to find common ground between me and the other individual. There's certain points where I get my heels dug in and I can't compromise. But there's oftentimes I'm trying to find common ground, even with people that I very much disagree with, so we can find ways to work on those issues and bridge those gaps. Jack Balkin goes on to say, adornment brings success as a small thing. It smooths the path of life and makes it more bearable. When adornment becomes the central thing, it can easily become perverted because it is placed above other human values and human needs. Nevertheless, the study of beauty helps us understand the profundity of the world. Through the contemplation of beauty and form, we discover both the demands of a particular time and the power of the unchanging. And through attention to how beauty is produced, we apprehend the connections between outer form and inner nature. The beauty of fire or of a mountain range is the natural product of the processes that give rise to these things. It is the same in human life. The Book of Changes teaches that outer beauty should emerge as the natural product of inner beauty. Then adornment does not simply cover or disguise a person's nature, but becomes its organic expression. In practical terms, this hexagram signifies that you cannot exert great influence on the situation, but you can have a positive effect in small ways. Behave with tact and consideration to others. For the time being, you must accept aspects of the situation that you do not like, but you can make progress at the periphery if you act with charm and grace. Work on polishing your appearance and your powers of persuasion. Brush up on your talents. Smooth out the rough edges of your life and in your relationships with others. This is a good time to improve your habits of communication and self-expression. Okay, that sounds like good things to focus on for Gemini season, right? Javier says, I'll keep an eye out for you. I got your back. Thanks, friend. Appreciate that. This brings us to our final omen, I guess, and that is the Python, Laden. This is a multi-headed Hydra-like dragon. I don't think it is the Hydra, but this is the dragon that guarded the golden apples in the garden of Hyperion, I think, Hesperion. I'm going to read to you from Animal Frequency. Okay, this is very interesting for what we're experiencing. Laden in Greek mythology was a 100-headed serpent dragon that guarded the golden apples of the Hesperides. Because of its many heads, some of Laden's eyes were always on alert if anyone tried to take the sacred apples. Hercules killed Laden by shooting him with an arrow that had been dipped in the Hydra's poisoned blood and then decapitating the heads. He then stole the sacred golden apples to complete his 11th labor. Hera turned Laden into the constellation Draco. It is said that after Laden died, the Hesperides were so wrought with grief that they turned themselves into a black poplar, an elm, and a willow tree. This animal has talents for adventurousness, assertiveness, seeing different perspectives, right, with Gemini, fearlessness, fluidity, formidability, passionate, persistence, prosperity, protection, regalness, relentlessness, resiliency, strength, and survival. It has challenges of being deadly, fierce, hoarding, intimidating, possessive, unpredictable. When Laden appears, it means to be on guard because someone may try to take something that is yours. This could be as simple as someone taking an ink pen off your desk or taking your lunch from the refrigerator. Heaven forbid. That would be the ultimate Taurus transgression. My goodness. Or it could be more complicated. Laden means to watch your back and be extra diligent about safety for the next few weeks. Laden will protect you, but you should also heighten your awareness. Laden means you will have new opportunities coming your way that will increase your financial status. The golden apples Laden protected were sacred and valuable. This means your own financial value will increase. Make sure that you're looking for these opportunities so that you don't miss them. Laden means you are a formidable opponent at work. You enjoy the competitiveness of a business environment and fearlessly work to be successful. You may even own your own company. Laden was passionate about its job of protecting the golden apples and fought to the end to keep them safe. You are just as passionate in every aspect of your life. You don't hide your feelings, but express them as you feel them. You are a great debater because you have many different points of view and the strength and determination to get others to see your views. This animal can assist you when you need to be more flexible. Sounds like Gemini season to me. There are times when you can get stuck in your ways and become somewhat inflexible. Laden can help you let go of any rigidity so that you're suppler in how you think and feel. Laden can help you be more assertive in situations when someone else is always talking over you or never letting you get a word in the conversation. With 100 heads, Laden can have a lot to say and can take attention away from others who are trying to be controlling. Laden warns against being too intimidating so that you have to handle yourself with grace and so that you handle yourself with grace and with a regal manner. Laden is unpredictable and encourages you to shake things up in your life sometimes. That sounds a lot like Uranus in Gemini. You know, shaking up the way that we communicate, shaking up the way that we think of our options in life, getting out of ruts, but also having to soften the delivery. Oftentimes when we're talking about very intense and passionate things, myself included, we can get really intense about it. And sometimes our message is not received in the way that we are intending. So how do we start to communicate that message so that the essence of what we're trying to communicate, sometimes care for others, can come off like criticism? How do we soften that message so that it can be received as care rather than felt as criticism? Those are things to think about with Laden, or the story of Python. And maybe that can help lead to greater prosperity in whatever form that we're pursuing. All right. Javier says, I think that's what I'm working on now. Javier has some heavy Gemini placements. So this is a good exercise for those of us that have Gemini placements, right? Is learning how to communicate so that our message is actually received with the intention that we had behind it rather than misinterpreted. Javier says, Uranus is helping me now big time. I love it. I love it. I'm wishing you luck with that, Javier. You got this, one day at a time, right? Just stay flexible and keep love at the center of it, right? Keep the love at the center of it. All right, friends, that is what I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you for all the new faces that we have in the chat and in the community here today. Thanks for people stopping by, new friends. I love it. I'm so happy to see you here. Thank you for the old friends stopping in. Thank you for continuing to show up each week. Do me a favor if you haven't already. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can find me over at Spencer Michaud on social media, wherever social media you have. I'm somewhat active, but not super active. I've been reposting a lot of social things that are in service of maybe protecting the earth and creating awareness around challenging things. But I always like to balance that out with sharing things that I find beautiful in nature and things of that nature. Go over and find me over at spencermichaud.com. Sign up for a reading if that speaks to you or you're called to do so at this time. And then go support my beautiful partner at Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. That's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much, friends. It's been wonderful hanging out with you. Have a wonderful June. Try to hang in there. Try to use your grace. Try to use all of your communication skills. Learn new communication skills if that's something that you need. And we'll get through it. We'll get through it together. Come from a strong base of kindness, right? Be kind to yourself too. Integrate not only your shadow, but integrate the positive things about yourself too that you might project onto others and become that whole person that eventually the transition from Gemini to Cancer helps us to be a whole unified person that can manifest things in the world in a sensitive and nurturing and caring and loving way. So, all right, that's what I've got for you, friends. Have a great weekend. Have a lovely June, and we'll see you the next time. Peace.